Hey truckers, here is part 4 of Reincarnation of the Businesswoman at School. Let's dive into the video. She wasn't afraid that he'd searched for the gun, but she also didn't want to cause a scene. When Gu Ning got back to her school, it was 5 minutes away from the start of class. Thus Gu Ning immediately ran to her classroom from the gate. However, when she was about to enter the teaching building, someone stood in her way. If she hadn't stopped on time, she would have knocked him over. Seeing that the person was Qin Jing, Gu Ning was upset. She avoided him, wanting to leave. "Gu Ning, can we talk?" Qin Jing asked her at once. Gu Ning hadn't replied to his message on Friday. He had been annoyed, but he couldn't help but worry about her, so he had sent another message to Gu Ning on Saturday. The result had been the same. Qin Jing had then directly called Gu Ning. Surprisingly, he found out that Gu Ning had already blocked him. He was so mad at Gu Ning that he had decided to not care about her anymore. When he hadn't seen Gu Ning on Monday, he had wanted to ask Mu Ku about it, but felt embarrassed to do so. He had heard about what had happened from Gu Xiaoxiao this morning. "I have nothing to talk to you about," Gu Ning said plainly. She wanted to avoid Qin Jing, but was stopped by him again. Gu Ning's cold attitude aggravated Qin Jing. He said with slight anger, "Gu Ning, how could you be so unkind? I just wanted to help after I heard that you had been kicked out of your old house." "I am unkind? Help me?" Hearing that, Gu Ning laughed in a sarcastic way. She looked at him with dislike. "Qin Jing, is there anyone who've told you that you're very arrogant?" Qin Jing was annoyed at being humiliated by Gu Ning. He did want to help her, but she said that he was merely being arrogant. Apparently, Qin Jing still didn't understand Gu Ning's words. "Besides, how come I am the unkind person? Just because I don't want to talk to you? I don't need you help at all. You want to help someone who doesn't need your help. Doesn't it sound ridiculous?" Gu Ning didn't hesitate to humiliate him again. "Gu Ning, Qin Jing's face turned red, and his eyes were ablaze with anger. "Stay away from me, or you'll pay for it," Gu Ning threatened him. Then she left directly. Qin Jing intended to keep arguing with Gu Ning, but hearing Gu Ning's warning, he somehow couldn't say a word. He did feel threatened. At the same time, he also felt greatly humiliated. He wanted to teach Gu Ning a lesson right now to vent his anger. At the same time, he wasn't willing to see anything bad happen to her. The boy now had mixed emotions. On the stairs, Gu Xiaoxiao was glaring at Gu Ning. Obviously, she had seen and heard Gu Ning talking with Qin Jing just then. Gu Ning ignored her, but when she walked past, she gave Gu Xiaoxiao a provocative look. Gu Xiaoxiao wanted to tear her into pieces right away, but she didn't dare to do it. Why? Why did Qin Jing want to help Gu Ning? He was Gu Xiaoxiao's boyfriend now. Did Qin Jing really fall in love with Gu Ning because of her changes recently? No, impossible. Even though Gu Ning had changed, she was still a poor girl, who could never match with Qin Jing. Qin Jing turned around. He saw Gu Xiaoxiao, who was in a rage right in front of him. He immediately knew something was wrong. "Xiaoxiao, please don't be mad at me. I just felt guilty about what had happened before, so I want to help her." "Nothing else," Qin Jing explained. "But she is fine now," Gu Xiaoxiao retorted. She wasn't criticizing Qin Jing actually. She was simply dissatisfied to see Qin Jing wanting to help Gu Ning. "I know she's fine now, but we were the cause after all. Do you know, I'm not a cold-blooded person. I've already done evil things because of you. Can you still not believe my loyalty to you?" Qin Jing lied skillfully. He was an adept liar. Gu Xiaoxiao felt better after Qin Jing's explanation, but she still warned him, don't ever talk to her or help her again. She deserved to be kicked out of the old house. In Gu Xiaoxiao's eyes, Gu Ning was wrong in everything. Fine. Class is almost starting. Let's go back," Qin Jing answered airily. He himself didn't even notice that his attitude towards Gu Xiaoxiao had changed gradually. Gu Xiaoxiao closed her mouth, but she now hated Gu Ning more than ever. After the evening class, Gu Ning failed to notice that Leng Xiaoting was following her again. Even though there were many students in school uniforms in the evening, Leng Xiaoting still recognized Gu Ning from the first glance. However, when he found out that Gu Ning didn't take a bus or a taxi, but ran home, he was surprised. He knew Gu Ning was good at fighting, but it was dangerous for a teenage girl to run home at night. Ling Xiaoting had intended to take the gun back from Gu Ning, but now he somehow felt worried about the girl. He suddenly forgot his real goal, but wanted to protect her secretly. Discover W-Stories on no/e/lbin.com. Ling Xiaoting didn't realize it until they were close to Fenghua Luxury Mansion. She lived in Fenghua Luxury Mansion? Ling Xiaoting wanted to approach Gu Ning for the gun, but she greeted a middle-aged man, then walked inside with him. Ling Xiaoting believed that the man was Gu Ning's father, but no matter who he was, Ling Xiaoting wouldn't show up as long as there was someone else with Gu Ning. Therefore, he could only continue to follow her to find out what her address was. The middle-aged man was Jiang Su. Gu Qing wanted to eat fruit, so he went out to buy some. On his way back, he met Gu Ning by accident. On their way, Jiang Su told Gu Ning about the rent for the store. The rent was settled at the price of 500,000 yuan. He had signed a lease of 5 years, and would pay the rent yearly. The store was still in a mess, and the owner needed to clean it up first, so the lease would come into effect from the next Monday. Today was Tuesday, so it was 5 days away. Meanwhile, Jiang Su still needed to deal with many things. He had to register, contact manufacturers, hire staff and so forth. As for the registration, Gu Ning still believed that it would be faster if she used her network. The first person she thought of was Qin Yifan. If Qin Yifan couldn't help her, she would figure out another way. As for the car, most of the elder generation loved Mercedes-Benz or Bavarian Motorwork. Jiang Su had seen that Gu Qingxiang's car was a Mercedes-Benz. After that he loved Mercedes-Benz. Therefore, he had bought a Mercedes-Benz as well. He paid 486,000 yuan for the car. Gu Ning didn't say anything about that, as long as Jiang Su liked it. Jiang Su also bought a computer, and the workers would come to settle the network tomorrow. Gu Ning then told Jiang Su to help her get the network set up in her house as well. Gu Ning thought it would be more convenient if she had her own computer. Ling Xiaoting followed them from far behind until Gu Ning arrived at Zone G. He didn't leave until she walked inside. Ling Xiaoting drove his car and made several turns, then arrived at his house. He now lived in Zone C. There were maisonettes 1 in Zone C. Each house was at least 200 square meters. People who lived in this zone were truly the rich or the authorities. Well, those who lived in the zone of villas were richer or higher in the authorities. Ling Xiaoting didn't live in City F. He actually didn't have a house here either. He was going to one of his close friends, Su Jinqian's house. Su Jinqian didn't live in City F either. He was supposed to be on a vacation, but was forced to deal with some business here by his boss, so he was living here temporarily. Right now, Su Jinqian was in a gray suit of home clothing. He lay on a white sofa with his arms and legs spread far apart watching TV. He was complaining about the actor's acting skills at the same time. He seemed like a nut who was talking to himself. All west ch.rs on n.o/vli/n/.cm. He didn't have many friends in City F. He only came here for work, without any entertainment, so all he could do was stay at home watching TV and talking to himself. Su Jinqian almost hated Ling Xiaoting. Ling Xiaoting seldom came to visit him, but now the man was nowhere to be found. Su Jinqian was so bored. Well, even if Ling Xiaoting was here, he wouldn't talk to him a lot, but at least Su Jinqian wouldn't be as lonely as by staying alone. If it hadn't been for his job, he would have already had a girlfriend. Thinking of that, Su Jinqian was in pain having to watch the actors kissing in the show. Suddenly, some noises sounded outside. Su Jinqian knew that it must be Ling Xiaoting. He immediately sat up straight. As a military man, he couldn't help but behave himself in front of his boss, otherwise he would be criticized or punished. Although it was kind of an honor to be punished and trained by Ling Xiaoting, it was a torture too, because he was too cruel. Su Jinqian had no intention to torture himself. "Xiaoting, where have you been?" Su Jinqian asked. "None of your business," Ling Xiaoting answered. Su Jinqian rolled his eyes. He knew he couldn't get any information he wanted if Ling Xiaoting wasn't willing to tell him, thus he closed his mouth. Ling Xiaoting changed into a pair of slippers then walked upstairs. It seemed he didn't want to talk to Su Jinqian. Not because he disliked Su Jinqian, but he was always this quiet. People who were familiar with him had all gotten used to it already. Ling Xiaoting stopped halfway all of a sudden. He turned to look at Su Jinqian. "I'll be staying in your place for a while longer." Please help me prepare some clothes. Ling Xiaoting was terrible at choosing clothes. He only wore military uniforms or his black clothing. On the other hand, Su Jinchen's family was involved in the clothing industry, so it only took a call for him to get new clothes. What? Su Jinchen rounded his eyes. He couldn't believe what he had just heard. He wasn't surprised that Ling Xiaoting let him prepare clothes, but because Ling Xiaoting was going to stay here for a while longer. What had happened? Did he finally want to have a vacation? Ling Xiaoting obviously understood why Su Jinchen was so shocked, but he didn't say another word. He turned around and walked upstairs. Su Jinchen finally got his mind back. He smiled. He was happy to see Ling Xiaoting wanted to take a break. To be specific, all the Red Flame team would be thrilled to see that. Actually, there weren't many things the Red Flame team had to deal with. Ling Xiaoting as the captain didn't need to deal with everything in person either. Everyone in the team was super powerful on his own, but Ling Xiaoting's life was occupied with work. If the assignment wasn't very dangerous, he could step aside. However, as long as it was very dangerous, he would definitely join in. They could have 1 or 2 months vacation a year, but he never had a vacation. Accordingly, Ling Xiaoting had been living a super dangerous and boring life. Even his teammates couldn't tolerate it. Many had persuaded Ling Xiaoting to take a vacation, but he wouldn't listen. Since Ling Xiaoting decided to go on a vacation, Su Jinchen made up his mind to help his captain have a relaxing one. Now, let's introduce the Red Flame team. The Red Flame team was the highest-level military team in the country. Although it was subordinate to the country, it wasn't controlled by it. It had absolute autonomy. That was because the Red Flame team had absolute strength and loyalty to the country. Once the country faced any threat, the Red Flame team would be the first team to protect its country. Although there were only 12 men in the Red Flame team, each person was very strong and super powerful. Moreover, every member of the Red Flame team had an absolute military rank as well as position. Every one of them was also in charge of an army. Ling Xiaoting was the Major General himself. He was the youngest Major General in the country's history. He could win the rank of Major General, not because he had a powerful background, but because he had created extraordinary achievements. As for Su Jinchen, he was a senior colonel with many great achievements, but most of them had been done under the leadership of Ling Xiaoting. His ability was hardly comparable with Ling Xiaoting's. All in all, no one in the Red Flame didn't admire and obey Ling Xiaoting. Although Su Jinchen only ranked a level lower than Ling Xiaoting, that level was a huge gap in reality. Ling Xiaoting was the captain, so he didn't need to tell others that he was going on vacation. If anything happened, his teammates would call him. Gu Ning and Jiang Su went straight to Gu Ning's house, because both Gu Qing and Jiang Xinyue were in her place. Jiang Xinyue was a 9th grade student. She was supposed to have evening class, but her parents were worried about her safety, so they had applied for her to not attend the evening class. Junior high school was not as strict as high school and Jiang Xinyue was good at studying, so it was easy to apply. In high school, especially in the 3rd year of high school, it was necessary to take the National College Entrance Exam. Therefore, if you weren't one of the top 10 in the entire grade, it was impossible to not attend the evening class. Special situations excluded, of course. However, Gu Ning decided not to attend the evening class either after she got good scores at the monthly test. Although she seemed free now, she felt she lacked time and she couldn't do anything she wanted to. Besides, once her company was established, she wouldn't have time for classes. Now it wouldn't be difficult for her to get good academic results even if she didn't go to the afternoon classes. In the past, whenever Gu Ning was home, she felt lonely, but now, she had her beloved families around. She felt happy every day. The two families always gathered together chatting and watching TV. They didn't separate until 12 a.m. Gu Ning checked her phone and spoke to her friends for a while before she went to bed. The next day, Gu Ning got up early as usual, but the minute she left Zone Ji, she bumped into Ling Xiaoting who was waiting for her outside. Gu Ning felt upset all of a sudden. The man was literally everywhere. Gu Ning knew that she did something wrong, so she wasn't in mood to blame the man, no matter whether he had followed her or if it was a coincidence. Even she hated being stalked. Ling Xiaoting didn't care about what was on Gu Ning's mind. He walked towards her when she appeared in his sight. "You better give the gun back to me, you're just causing yourself trouble." Ling Xiaoting remained cool, but he didn't threaten Gu Ning the way he normally would. It seemed he didn't want to burden her. "Why can't you believe me?" Gu Ning struggled. Ling Xiaoting didn't say another word, but he seemed determined. Gu Ning knew the man would never let her get away with it. If she didn't give the gun back to him, he would never leave her alone. If Gu Man found out about what had happened when she had been in City G, things would get out of control. Gu Ning almost compromised, but she gave it one last shot. Well, it's not a big deal even if the gun is missing, right? Military officers never lack guns, right? If you're not one of the military or police personnel, it's illegal to have a gun privately, Ling Xiaoting said. How about those gangsters with guns? Why don't you deal with them? Gu Ning retorted. It's not the same case, Ling Xiaoting said. You must first have proof. Once you have proof, you can catch me, Gu Ning said. I have the surveillance video as the proof, Ling Xiaoting answered. Gu Ning was speechless. She couldn't argue back this time. Out of shame, Gu Ning didn't doubt Ling Xiaoting's words at all. Besides, he wasn't likely to lie as a military officer. Fine, she did make a mistake. Gu Ning planned to buy one from the black market later. Gu Ning took out her phone, handing it to Ling Xiaoting. The gun isn't with me right now. Give me your number and I'll bring it to you when I'm free. The gun had been put into the telepathic eye space, so it wasn't appropriate to pull it out now. Ling Xiaoting stopped for a second. He stared at Gu Ning's phone, but didn't take it immediately. It seemed he felt awkward to touch a female's stuff, but he didn't feel reluctant in his heart. After a while, he took Gu Ning's phone and typed in his name and number. He used Gu Ning's phone to call his, and then hung up when his phone rang. He then gave it back to Gu Ning. Gu Ning took her phone back. She took a glance then mumbled, Ling Xiaoting, you're really like your name. A cold man. Hearing that, Ling Xiaoting frowned a little. Although many people had said he was a cold man, he wasn't willing to hear it from Gu Ning. All right, I'm going to school now. Please don't stop me on the road again. I'll give the gun back to you later today or tomorrow. Gu Ning ignored Ling Xiaoting and left. Gu Ning had no idea that Ling Xiaoting had deceived her. There was no surveillance video at all. Watching Gu Ning leaving, Ling Xiaoting had mixed emotions. Even though the girl had done something that he always hated, he found it was hard to hate her. When Gu Ning was far away, Ling Xiaoting's face changed suddenly. He lowered his voice. Get out here now. In the dark, Su Jinchen stiffened. Shit. He wanted to run away, but didn't dare to. Su Jinchen had to show up at the end. Boss, Su Jinchen tried explaining, although he knew Ling Xiaoting wouldn't believe him. Ling Xiaoting didn't give him a chance to explain at all. He said directly, 20 kilometers. Su Jinchen's face immediately turned pale. Although he knew that he would be punished, he felt hurt when the punishment came. 20 kilometers was nothing to a senior soldier from the Special Force, but he was in a pair of slippers. He was wearing slippers now. This was all because he was curious when he had heard Ling Xiaoting go out early this morning. However, Su Jinchen soon cheered up, because he had just seen a shocking scene. His boss had gone out early this morning to meet a woman, no, a girl. He even recognized that the girl was the female student he had sent to the hospital last week. It was beyond his imagination, his boss finally changed. However, the girl was merely 18, and was still a high school student. Was it appropriate if they were together? Up.dfrm no/v/e/lb, n.co/m. Anyway, as long as his boss liked her, it was no big deal. Grandpa Ling had already said, as long as Ling Xiaoting was willing to get married, he didn't care about the girl's background at all. However, Su Jinchen had thought too far. There was nothing between Ling Xiaoting and Gu Ning. Gu Ning couldn't arrive at her school on time, because she had wasted some time on the way. She told her friends in the WeChat group to run as usual. Anyone who was lazy and didn't finish the task would be punished, and whoever reported it would be rewarded. Although Hao Ran and his brothers had an intimate connection with each other, they also enjoyed laughing at each other. Therefore, everyone was quick to follow Gu Ning's order. 20 kilometers took Su Jinchen almost an hour. It was quite normal for them to run as training, and 20 kilometers was nothing to him, but he was wearing slippers today, which were very uncomfortable while he was running. The minute he got home, Su Jinchen went to Ling Xiaoting before he went to shower. Hey, boss, are you dating that young girl? Hearing that, Ling Xiaoting immediately gave him a cold glance. Su Jinchen stepped backwards unconsciously, but he was so curious that he forgot the danger ahead. He looked at Ling Xiaoting with great curiosity, hoping to get the answer. No, Ling Xiaoting denied. No? Then why did you go to meet the girl this early morning? Su Jinchen apparently didn't believe him. Are you totally free now? Ling Xiaoting asked airily, but Su Jinchen sensed the threat in the air. His face stiffened. He knew that if he dared to say another word, he probably would be punished once again. Since you're not dating the young girl, I would like to have a try myself. I don't have a girlfriend now anyway. Both of us live in Fanghua luxury mansions, so it will be super convenient if we date, Su Jinchen said while he kept glancing at Ling Xiaoting's face. He wanted to see his reaction. Yes, Su Jinchen did it deliberately. Unfortunately, Ling Xiaoting's face remained the same, which puzzled Su Jinchen. Although Ling Xiaoting remained calm, he felt somewhat uncomfortable in his heart. However, he didn't know why, so he didn't think about it any further. Su Jinchen didn't know what was on Ling Xiaoting's mind, but he knew Ling Xiaoting very well. He never stayed close to a woman if it wasn't necessary. However, this female student was different. He had taken her to the hospital in person last time, and now he had gone to her early this morning. It was unusual. Su Jinchen made up his mind to investigate. Since Ling Xiaoting wouldn't tell him anything, he decided to start with the young girl. At noon, Gu Ning received a call from Zhou Xinghong. She stepped aside on purpose because it must be business. Hi, Uncle Zhou, Gu Ning answered the phone. Boss, is it convenient for you now? Zhou Xinghong asked. Sure, go ahead, Gu Ning replied. I've already found a designer and 2 engravers. They're willing to work for you like me. I've also found the store and the processing plant. The store is 200 square meters, located in the downtown, and the annual rent is 500,000 yuan. The processing plant is in the factory area, between the Antique Street and the downtown. It is 160 square meters and 10 minutes away from both sides, not far away nor near. Its annual rent is 250,000. Do you have any opinions, boss? Zhou Xinghong said without a break. No, you can make the decisions, Gu Ning said. Since she let Zhou Xinghong completely be in charge of the business, she chose to trust him. Zhou Xinghong actually knew that Gu Ning would agree, but he still asked for her opinion out of respect. Sure, and I've bought the machines as well. They'll arrive in 2 days. A well-decorated apartment is also settled. You can move in any time you want, Zhou Xinghong added. Great, thanks, Uncle Zhou. I'll be there this weekend and I'll deal with all the documents. Oh, please go and find out whether there are new raw materials in the Stone Gambling Street, Gu Ning said. Gu Ning knew that the sales would go up in those raw materials shops after she had cut out a lot of jade there last weekend. If they had sold a lot, they must also have brought many in. Accordingly, Gu Ning would have many more choices. If there weren't any new choices, it was unlikely to get more jade. Zhou Xinghong immediately answered, no problem. I'll go find out later. And the car will be available tomorrow. I'll pick you up then. Find uptetevils on n/v/elbin.co/m. After that, they talked for a while longer before hanging up, but Gu Ning was a little worried after she hung up. What was she going to say to Gu Man if she went to City G this weekend? Oh, she could still use Muku as her cover. She decided to explain to her mother that Muku was going to open another shop in City G, and they needed to inspect it. Gu Ning and her friends went straight to the woods after their meal in the afternoon. However, at the same time, there was a fierce fight going on in the woods. No, to be specific, a boy was being beaten up by 3 other boys. The boy huddled on the ground with his head covered by his arms and let the fists and feet fall down on his body. Not because he didn't want to fight back, but because he couldn't. Then a male voice coldly said, look at you now. I've disliked you for a long, long time. Your father is the chairman of Xinhua Real Estate, so I didn't dare to deal with you, but now, your father will soon step down from the chairman position. And your slut stepmother and her lover fled with the money. Your family is now in trouble with capital turnover. If you can't get the funds this week, your family will declare bankruptcy. You better go back and advise your father to sell the company to my father. In that case, your family may survive. Otherwise, your family will go bankrupt with huge debts, which isn't good at all. Wasn't he the boy who had said that he liked her the other day? Also, the Xinhua Real Estate, wasn't it one of the 3 largest real estate companies in City F? It had 500 million yuan in assets and was one of the third-line richest families in City F. What had happened? Gu Ning had an idea in her mind. You never, and Yi wanted to retort, but shouted in great pain instead. Gu Ning immediately ran in the direction of his voice. Although Hao Ran and others didn't know why, they followed at once. Before long, they all saw 3 boys hitting another boy on the ground with great force. The 3 boys were all strangers, so the one who was being beaten must be an Yi. Without further thought, Gu Ning dashed towards them. Those boys were knocked a meter away by a heavy blow before they even realized. They all fell heavily onto the ground. They couldn't even utter a word because of the pain. Hao Ran and others all rounded their eyes, even though they already knew how powerful Gu Ning was. What the F***ck? It was so cool! And Yi didn't raise his head until he heard the shriek. He was immediately struck dumb. He glanced at the boys on the ground first, and then surprisingly found that Gu Ning was standing in front of him. And Yi felt that it was super embarrassing to let his goddess see him being so pathetic, but since Gu Ning had rescued him, he had to thank her no matter how embarrassed he felt. Up.dfrm no/v/e/lb/i n.co/m. Thus Yi turned to Gu Ning and thanked her with sincerity. Thank you so much, Gu Ning. You're welcome, Gu Ning said. She looked to Hao Ran and other. Come and help him go to the infirmary. Hearing Gu Ning's voice, Hao Ran and others got their minds back. Zhang Tianping and Qin Zixuan ran to help Yi stand on his feet without delay. Then they walked towards the infirmary. There were bruises all over Yi's body and face. Fortunately, the wounds were only on the skin with no injuries to the bones. He would be fine after a few days of rest. Yi now absolutely couldn't go home alone, so Gu Ning proposed to take Yi home with Hao Ran and Qin Zixuan. Hao Ran had driven to school today. His car was parked in the parking lot outside of the school. Yi felt embarrassed at first, but he couldn't go home by himself. Moreover, his family was in a mess right now, so it wasn't a good idea to let his family pick him up. On the way, Gu Ning asked Yi about what had happened. Yi told her everything afterwards. Just like what the boy had said, Yi's stepmother along with his father's closest friend, who was the accountant of the Xinhua Real Estate, had absconded with more than 100 million yuan in liquidity and 300 million yuan in funds just borrowed from banks. Now Xinhua Real Estate was in a difficult position. If there was no money to keep the company afloat this week, Xinhua would completely go bankrupt. Moreover, with the current situation of Xinhua Real Estate, it was impossible to borrow money from the banks. Yi's father was now trying to borrow money from his network, but no one would lend him anything. No one dared to lend over several 100 million yuan to him. Accordingly, Yi's father could only sell the company to pay the debts. There were several buyers competing with each other, all trying to buy the company at a lower price, so the deal hadn't been settled yet. Although the police were tracking Yi's stepmother and the man, nothing had changed recently. Hearing that, Hao Ran and Qin Zixuan felt sorry for him, but they didn't have intentions to help him either. The amount of funds needed was so huge. They couldn't afford it. However, Gu Ning made up her mind to buy Xinhua Real Estate. Xinhua Real Estate was one of the 3 largest real estate companies in City F with a powerful network. Although it could barely stay afloat now, it would recover quickly as long as the funds were in place. It was so much better than if Gu Ning started from the very beginning herself. Yi's place wasn't far away from the school. They arrived at a high-end area after 20 minutes. Although this area was ranked lower than the Fenghua luxury mansion, it had been built 7 years ago. In the old time, it had been the most popular residential area. Yi's family lived in a villa. The villa was huge, but seemed empty. They had laid off the maid since the company was in trouble. They couldn't afford a maid now. In the study on the 2nd floor, Yi's father, Guangyao, sank into a chair. There was no one else in this house, so it was very quiet. When he heard the sound of a door-opening door downstairs, he immediately sat up straight. Who? No one else, except he and Yi, had the key of this house now, but wasn't Yi at school? Or, was that woman coming back? He thought that it was impossible. That woman didn't dare to come back. With that thought, Guangyao stood up walking outside. When he appeared at the edge of the stairs, he saw Yi being supported by his 2 schoolmates with bruises on his face and arms. He was greatly shocked. He immediately ran downstairs. Before greeting Gu Ning and others, he worriedly asked An Yi, what happened to you? And Guang Yao didn't know what to do now. He wanted to check his son's wounds, but was afraid to hurt him. An Yi knew he couldn't hide it, so he told his father everything. And Guang Yao naturally was in a rage after that, but no matter how mad he was, he restricted his anger for now. He had to thank those schoolmates who had saved his son first. And Guang Yao didn't disdain them just because they were teenagers. He thanked them with great sincerity instead. Thank you all so much for saving my son. It's nothing, Gu Ning and others said together. Then Gu Ning turned to the boys, please help An Yi to go to his room and change his clothes. Gu Ning did it on purpose. She wanted to spend some time alone with Guang Yao. Oh, please stay here. I'll do it. And Guang Yao didn't want to bother them any further. Mr. An, it's fine. Please let them handle it, Gu Ning added. Yes, please let us do it, Hao Ran and Qin Zixuan said. Then they directly supported An Yi in walking to the stairs. And Guang Yao didn't insist, because it wasn't appropriate to leave Gu Ning alone in the living room. Thus Guang Yao invited Gu Ning to have a seat, then handed her a cup of water. Thank you, Mr. An. Gu Ning took the cup. Gu Ning looked at Guang Yao, who was just 40, but had aged a lot because of what had happened. Gu Ning didn't want to waste time, so she got straight to the point. Mr. An, nice to meet you. My name is Gu Ning. I know Mr. An's company is in trouble now and that you want to sell it. And I am very interested in Mr. An's company. I definitely will give you the most reasonable price. How about that, Mr. An? What? Hearing that, Guang Yao was really surprised. He couldn't believe his ears. What had happened to the Xinhua real estate wasn't a secret. And Guang Yao didn't feel surprised that Gu Ning knew about it, but she was merely an 18-year-old student and she wanted to buy his company? Was it a joke? However, Gu Ning behaved like a calm and mature grown-up. She didn't seem like she was joking at all. Besides, who would ever joke about that? Anyway, it was still hard for Guang Yao to believe that a student was able to buy his company. Her family was the real buyer. Thinking of that, Guang Yao asked, is your family planning to buy it? No, I want to buy it myself. Gu Ning actually had the intention to cooperate with Guang Yao, so she didn't want to hide. She took it more seriously instead to make him feel her sincerity. I know Mr. An doesn't trust me because I'm so young, which is quite understandable. I am too young indeed. After all, this is a deal of a few 100 million yuan. However, since it's a deal, we will need a lawyer to notarize it. The deal won't be settled until the contract is signed. Therefore, it would be too expensive for me to trap you, right? And Guang Yao stared at Gu Ning. He had no idea what to say. Although he agreed with Gu Ning on what she had said, he felt that it was so unreal. While Guang Yao was still in the shock, Gu Ning wrote her name and number on a piece of paper beside the table. She handed it to Guang Yao. Mr. An, this is my number. I think we probably can't talk too much since the time is limited right now, but I do hope you can make your decision after we talk further about this. I'm free this noon and afternoon. And Guang Yao took the paper. Sure, I'll consider it. Actually, Guang Yao had been convinced already. The other buyers had all given him a very low price. He would lose a lot of money if he agreed to sell his company to them. The moment that Gu Ning finished her talk with Guang Yao, Hao Ran and Qin Zixuan came downstairs. Then they left for their school. When Gu Ning and others were gone, Guang Yao immediately went to An Yi's room to check on his wounds. Guang Yao wanted to ask An Yi about Gu Ning, but gave it up at the end. Although Gu Ning and her friends would tell their head teacher what had happened to An Yi with proof from the infirmary, An Yi's father still called An Yi's head teacher himself. When Gu Ning got back home that night, she found her family were all unhappy. She was then told that her third uncle, Gu Qinyang, and his family would be back to City F this Friday. He even asked to have a meal with them the day after tomorrow. Gu Qinyang didn't live in City F, but City G. Both Gu Qinyang and his wife worked in a national department. They lived a good life with a monthly wage of 12,000 yuan. Otherwise, they couldn't buy a house in City G, which was a second-tier city. They had even bought a second house the other day. Their housing fund could cover the house mortgage, and they didn't have to worry about the money at all. Gu Man already had broken off the connection with her mother and Lin Li Juan, so she wasn't willing to go have a meal with them, but it was Gu Qingyang who invited her, so it wasn't appropriate if she didn't show up. Although they weren't intimate, they were brother and sister after all. They hadn't done anything bad to Gu Man, even though they had never helped her either. Gu Ning didn't express her opinion. It was all up to Gu Man. At the end, Gu Man agreed. Therefore, Gu Ning decided to go to City G on Saturday. She knew that those people in the Gu family didn't want to see her, but she was worried about Gu Man. Although Gu Qing and Jiangsu would be there as well, both of them were a little weak. If there was any argument, they wouldn't be able to help at all. Gu Ning didn't remember that she still had to give the gun back to Leng Xiaoting until she was about to go to bed. Although she was reluctant to do that, she had to fulfill her promise. She had to give it back anyway, so she decided to give it back earlier. Thus she sent a message to Leng Xiaoting and told him to wait for her at the gate of Zone G at 5 a.m. in the morning. She would give the gun back to him then. If he was late, she would leave directly. All right, Gu Ning admitted she purposely set such an early time. If he wanted the gun, then he had to be patient. However, when Leng Xiaoting received the message, he wasn't in City F, so he could only send a message back asking for a rain check. Gu Ning was speechless. She typed and sent, "I want to give it back to you, but you're absent. I think the gun doesn't want to go back to you at all. Why don't you leave it with me?" She didn't know whether Leng Xiaoting had seen her message or not, because he didn't reply anymore. The next day, Gu Ning walked out of Zone G. Su Jinchen was in a sports suit and accidentally ran over from the other side towards Gu Ning. He met Gu Ning with a surprised face. "Oh, it's you. What a coincidence. Are you going to school now?" he asked. It wasn't a coincidence at all. Su Jinchen actually did it on purpose. "Yes, are you running at such an early time?" Although Gu Ning barely knew him, she greeted him friendly, given that he had helped her. "Yeah. Do you live here too?" "I live in Zone C, and we're neighbors." "Oh, what's your name by the way?" "I'm Su Jinchen," the man asked, although he came to Gu Ning for a reason. "I'm Gu Ning," Gu Ning replied. "Nice to meet you. Can I ask you a question? What's your relationship with Xiaoting? Please don't get me wrong. I'm simply curious about that. I grew up with Xiaoting, and I work with him now. I have never seen him being with a girl before." Su Jinchen didn't bother to hide. Had never been with a girl? Gu Ning was shocked at first, but then she understood it. Leng Xiaoting was such a cold man. There properly wasn't any woman who wasn't afraid of him. Even Gu Ning felt stressed in front of him. Because Gu Ning had a little disagreement with Leng Xiaoting, she said, "Maybe he is gay." "I barely know him. We have just met for several times, so there is nothing between us." "Gay?" Hearing that, Su Jinchen was astonished for a second, then snorted with laughter. "Ha ha, ha ha, we thought the same thing before, but I promise you Xiaoting is definitely not gay." "Oh, have you tried?" Gu Ning put on an evil face. Su Jinchen immediately understood, and argued, "Nonsense. I have never ever done that. I like women." Gu Ning shrugged. "Maybe, he only likes himself." "Haha, you're so funny." Su Jinchen laughed again. "Yeah, maybe you're right. He is in love with himself." After a while, Gu Ning said, "Sorry, I have to leave for my classes." "Oh, right." Su Jinchen didn't want to bother her any longer. However, he didn't believe that there was nothing going on between Gu Ning and Leng Xiaoting. Otherwise, why had Leng Xiaoting come to meet her so early in the morning? Maybe Leng Xiaoting was still chasing her. Ever since Chu Peihan, Hao Ran and the others had regarded Gu Ning as their boss, they almost didn't miss a class afterwards. All of their teachers and classmates found it very odd, but for those teachers, they were very happy to see it. The last thing that the head teacher wanted to see was that there were students who were absent from classes. After the morning classes, Gu Ning received a phone call from N Guangyao on her way to the canteen. He wanted to talk to her about the acquisition deal. Gu Ning didn't feel surprised that N Guangyao came to her. She assumed that he would call her this noon, or afternoon. Gu Ning also wanted to settle the deal soon. Even if she had no time, she would make an effort to be available. Gu Ning left the school after she told her friends that she was going out. Although her friends were all curious, they didn't ask since Gu Ning wasn't willing to tell them. Everyone had their own secrets. For Gu Ning's convenience, Guang Yao met her in a nearby restaurant. It only took a dozen minutes to get there by walking. Guang Yao had already arrived. Since the deal was very important, Guang Yao booked a private room. "Miss Gu, nice to meet you. Please have a seat." When Gu Ning stepped inside, Guang Yao immediately stood up and welcomed her. He treated her with great respect. Indeed, dignity had nothing to do with age in front of power. The minute that Gu Ning sat down, Guang Yao let Gu Ning order first. Gu Ning didn't hesitate. She ordered 2 dishes, while Guang Yao ordered 1. 3 dishes would be enough for them. They got down to business before the dishes were even on the table. "Miss Gu, the most reasonable price for Xinhua real estate is 400 million yuan. What's your opinion?" Guang Yao asked. 400 million yuan wasn't much, but was much higher than the offers from other buyers. Businessmen valued profits most, so they all wanted to gain the most at the lowest price. However, 400 million yuan was just enough for Guang Yao to pay his debts. He could only keep his house and a car at the price of 1 million, but he would still have to sell the house and the car for money to support his family. "No problem." Gu Ning agreed without second thought, which surprised Guang Yao. He didn't know what to do all of a sudden. Actually, Gu Ning couldn't pay 400 million yuan right now. Her own company needed 100 million and she only had 300 million yuan left, but she planned to go to City G this weekend for stone gambling. If she could cut out more jade, she could sell them. If not, she still could sell some that she had stored in the telepathic eye space. Thus she said, "However, I only have 300 million yuan in cash with me now. I'm afraid we must wait until after this weekend to sign the contract." Discover new chapters at novelby.co. Sure, Guang Yao agreed. He understood that it took time to collect the money to buy a huge company. Therefore, it wasn't a problem to wait for a few days. Besides, the Xinhua real estate could still run for around a week. "Mr. N, actually, I like a win-win situation more," Gu Ning suddenly said. Guang Yao was struck dumb for a second. He didn't know what the meaning of Gu Ning's words were. He asked, "Miss Gu, what do you mean?" "I don't know whether the police can help you get the money back. If they get the money back, it won't be hard for you to run the business continuously. However, if the money is lost like that, you will be in a great trouble. Thus, I have an idea," Gu Ning said. "What idea?" Guang Yao asked. "Mr. N, you must also know that I am only a high school student. I don't have time to run a company myself. So I want to find someone with the ability to help me. Mr. N, you're the founder of Xinhua Real Estate. You have everything a chairman needs. Therefore, I intend to hire you to continue to serve as the chairman of Xinhua Real Estate. In other words, I'll stay behind the scenes. In return, you'll get a very generous salary and 20% shares of the company. Moreover, you will have the absolute right to manage the company. Under normal circumstances, I won't interfere with your decisions unless it is necessary, or you can't decide on what to do. Mr. N, are you willing to do that?" Gu Ning said. Guang Yao was totally shocked to hear that. What? A very generous salary and 20% shares of the company to hire him as the chairman with absolute right over it? 20% of the shares wasn't a small amount of money. That was literally a free lunch out of the blue. Guang Yao felt that it was so unreal. However, he had to admit that he was eager to accept it, because he really didn't want to leave Xinhua Real Estate. He had spent half of his life to build Xinhua Real Estate. He was the only person who knew what he had been through for the company. However, it was too good to be true. Guang Yao cautiously asked, "Miss Gu, 20% shares are not a small amount. You also want me to be fully in charge of the company. Are you sure this isn't a joke or a lie? Besides, why do you trust me? Mr. N, you're in a mess now only because you've met those evil people. However, you can't deny your ability. Your ability and your network can help me save a lot of effort. You also need to manage the company as usual, but actually you're working for me. Now do you still believe you're the one who benefits the most from the deal?" Gu Ning said to comfort him. Guang Yao thought what Gu Ning had just said was reasonable. He was immediately relieved. Gu Ning added, besides, I never doubt my employees. If you treat me with sincerity, I'll give you a thriving future, but if you betray me, you'll be dead. No way around it. Gu Ning said the same thing to Guangyao as what she had said to Zhou Xinghong. She promised and warned together. Gu Ning even delightedly threatened Guangyao when she was saying the word dead. Guangyao immediately felt that it was hard to breathe, as if he had sensed the smell of death. He was now completely shocked by an 18-year-old girl's power. Compared with Zhou Xinghong, Guangyao was more sophisticated. He believed Gu Ning must be an extraordinary girl. However, he had no intention to guess Gu Ning's real background. As long as he could feel Gu Ning's sincerity to hire him, he was willing to work for her. Even though Gu Ning hired him for his ability and network, she did help him a lot. Therefore, Guangyao had no reason to refuse. He wasn't an idiot. I personally look forward to working with Mr. N very much, but it's all up to you. You can make the decision on your own, Gu Ning said. However, she already knew Guangyao would agree. Guangyao finally got his mind back. He felt like crying, but he forced himself not to. Suddenly, Guangyao stood up and bowed to Gu Ning. He said with seriously, Miss Gu, thank you so much for your trust and generosity. I promise that I'll manage the company as always. I'll never let you down. Since Guangyao accepted the deal, Gu Ning was his boss from now on, but Gu Ning wasn't an arrogant person. No matter what had happened, Guangyao was much older than her. She didn't want to be disrespectful. Thus she stood up at once. Mr. N, it's a great pleasure to work with you. Gu Ning held her hand out to Guangyao. They shook hands, and the deal was done. There is also another very important thing. What I need is a company with the absolute right to make decisions. That is to say, this company must be completely in the control of you and me. I don't like to argue a lot before making decisions. No one can build a thriving business on quarrels. Those who like arguing could do nothing with the money. So, I will remove all shareholders. There will be only 3 shares of Xinhua. I'll have 70% shares, and you'll have 20% shares, while the other 10% shares are for the market. If they want to stay in Xinhua, I will arrange suitable positions for them. However, I only want loyal people, Gu Ning said with determination. She wouldn't give up on that, because she didn't need to find fund like others, she wouldn't allow anyone to do nothing while being paid. Hearing that, Guangyao was astonished again. This girl was really ambitious. However, he respected her ambition. No one would want outsiders to share his or her own properties. FITDEUPTSON.NO/V/E/LN.com. Like what Gu Ning had said, many people would do nothing but argue while being paid. Especially when it came to settling deals, many of them would disagree with each other, then they would start to argue a lot. Guangyao knew that so well. Some were cowards who were afraid to take risks, so they stopped the project. Accordingly, the project couldn't move on smoothly. Right now, Guangyao admired Gu Ning's determination more than ever. He was also more confident about the future ahead. At that time, the dishes were put on the table, so Gu Ning and Guangyao began to eat. Since the time was limited, Gu Ning seized every minute to talk about the business. She opened her mouth, "Oh, how do you manage the construction materials? The manufacturers never sell goods to the outside, so we turn to agencies for the materials," Guangyao said. "Is the building materials you need to build the community a one-time contract with the agency?" Gu Ning asked. "Not really. Because the general communities are built in 1, 2, or 3 phases, we sign the contract according to the phase. The first phase of Xinhua is currently under construction. The second phase will soon begin. If the seller isn't satisfied with the construction materials, he can stop renewing the contract, but that rarely happens, because the seller will normally use a brand for a long time," Guangyao said. Knowing that, Gu Ning was relieved. "Mr. N, actually, my uncle is preparing to go into the business of construction materials, and I'm considering letting him be the agency of the construction materials for Xinhua real estate. Of course, I also have my own bottom line. I will only help him because he has the ability. So please don't worry that I'll lower the standards of the project because I want to help my family. If so, I would rather give him an amount of money instead. I also don't plan on letting my family know about my properties. After all, I am too young now, and I don't want them to worry about me. So please don't worry about our connection, but run the business as usual, Gu Ning said. Although she handed the company over to N Guangyao, the property would soon be hers. She naturally had the right to control it, and she would make full use of it. And Guangyao didn't think that it was inappropriate, so he happily agreed. Oh, Mr. N, do you know someone in the Industry and Commerce Bureau? My uncle's company hasn't registered yet. I want to settle it as soon as possible, Gu Ning said. It's easy. I'll deal with it, and Guangyao answered without delay. And Guangyao was one of the richest men in City F. He definitely knew someone with the power. Although the Xinhua real estate was in trouble now, he still had his network to help him before he went bankrupt. Besides, it was not a big deal. As long as you have prepared the documents, it would be super easy to get it done with the help from the authorities. After the meal, Gu Ning went back to her school. In the afternoon, Gu Man called Gu Ning to come home soon. Jiang Su had gotten his car, so they all wanted to celebrate. On her way home, Gu Ning received a call from N Guangyao. He had already dealt with the Industry and Commerce Bureau. The registration would be done within a week. When Gu Ning got home, everyone was so happy at getting a new car. Gu Qing and Gu Man had gone with Jiang Su to get the new car. It was the first time they had ever been in such an expensive car, so they were all thrilled. After Gu Ning got back, both Gu Man and Gu Qing dropped the vegetables they had been washing and talked to Gu Ning for a long while about the new car. Gu Ning felt like laughing. When they went back to cook, Gu Ning finally had time to tell Jiang Su about the registration. Gu Ning only told him that she had turned to a schoolmate's father for help. She had a good relationship with that schoolmate, so his father kindly helped with this as soon as this afternoon. Gu Ning also revealed a little about the deal of supplying the construction materials. Her classmate's father was doing real estate. If Jiang Su was willing to be the dealer of the construction material, he would cooperate with him in the future. Knowing that, Jiang Su was excited, but he also felt ashamed that Gu Ning had dealt with everything for him. Although Gu Ning had said that she wouldn't interfere in his business, Jiang Su didn't mind what she had done today. Besides, everything Gu Ning had done was a big obstacle to him. She had helped a lot. It was a Friday, and the monthly test was about to begin. Gu Ning and her friends gathered together at the football field as usual, but they didn't run. They were simply chatting while walking around. I hate tests the most. They won't make any difference. If my family didn't force me to come to school, I really would like to drop out, Hao Ran said with annoyance. Studying was a hateful nightmare to him. Me neither, but I must keep on studying, Chu Peihan said. That was the reason why she still could get good scores even though she missed a lot of classes. She played hard, but also studied hard. Moreover, some people were born intelligent. They spent much less time on learning but gained much more than ordinary people. Chu Peihan was one of them. Actually, Hao Ran and the boys were smart too. Otherwise they couldn't run their bar so well. They just weren't interested in studying. If they had been willing to study hard, they would have been good students as well. Their scores were better than the old Gu Ning anyway. They remained in the worst classroom, the 7th classroom, only because they liked playing and causing trouble. I think it's better to keep on studying in school, even if you have a good family background and you don't lack anything. Your parents can't support you for a lifetime. In the future, you have to inherit their enterprises. If you don't have the ability, you'll be eliminated or replaced by the strong. Ability requires rich professional knowledge, social experience and an extensive network, and the university is the best place to learn knowledge, Mu Ku, who was always an excellent student, said. Mu Ku is right. University is important, Gu Ning agreed. New tirais at n/vel/b/i/n.co. I'm absolutely going to a university, and I'll work hard to achieve a lot so that my family can live a good life. Yu Mixi had great hope for her university. She so badly wanted to change her and her family's lives. You will. Gu Ning encouraged her. Gu Ning wouldn't let Yu Mixi stay poor after all. She would help Yu Mixi to grow up and be successful one day in the future. She would wait until her business empire was established. They went back to their classrooms separately. The monthly test was almost the same as a usual test. The first was a Chinese test in the course of 2 classes, 100 minutes in all. One could hand the paper in half an hour after the test began, but no one had ever done that before. Even if they didn't know the answers, most people would not hand the paper in until the time was over. Gu Ning spent the time of a class to finish the Chinese paper. She handed the paper in, then left the classroom. Everyone was surprised to see that. It was beyond their imagination that Gu Ning would be the first one. She had always been the last one to hand the paper in the past. Everyone knew she wasn't good at studying, so they assumed that she must not know the answers at all, so handed the paper in earlier. It was acceptable to hand the paper in at that time, so the teacher didn't say anything. However, when she saw Gu Ning's paper, she was shocked. The paper was well done in good handwriting, and all the answers were right. The writing part almost got a full score for her outstanding skills. Of course, the teacher wouldn't give a full score to the writing part. 1 or 2 points would normally be deducted. Because Gu Ning had helped Yu Mixi studying these days, Yu Mixi knew that Gu Ning had improved her studying, she was even better than her. Thus she knew Gu Ning must have done a good job. Gu Ning went to the garden after she had handed the paper in. She was used to being alone, so she didn't feel bored at all. However, only 5 minutes later, Hao Ran and his brothers came to her. They had an agreement to come to the garden once they finished the test. Hao Ran and his brothers couldn't finish the paper at all, so they handed the paper in early. When they saw Gu Ning, they were all astonished. They had heard that Gu Ning was bad at studying, so they believed that Gu Ning had been in the same situation as them. Thinking of that, Hao Ran asked, "Boss, did you finish the paper, or did you barely know the answers?" "I finished it," Gu Ning said. "Wow. What score do you think you will get?" Qin Zixuan asked. 90%. To get 90% you had to get above 90 points. Hao Ran and his brothers were all amazed. "Are you sure?" Hao Ran found it unbearable. Who said that Gu Ning was bad at studying? Gu Ning obviously knew why they were shocked. When she had helped Yu Mixi with her assignments, Yu Mixi was surprised too. "You'll know when the results are out." Gu Ning didn't explain further. Fine. Since Gu Ning didn't want to tell them, they stopped asking. Then, Hao Ran said, "Boss, today is Friday. Let's go have some fun in our bar tonight." This was the second time Hao Ran had invited her. It wouldn't be appropriate if she rejected again. "Sure. When and where?" "I'll come to you. After the test, we can have dinner together, then we can go there together," Qin Zixuan said. "Not today. I have to eat at home." "I'll be a little late," Gu Ning replied. "Okay." It is in Yongle Road, the V5 bar, it's the letter V and the Arabic numeral 5. It's the mighty homonym and is also the meaning of mighty, haha. Hao Ran said. "Wow. I like the name," Gu Ning complimented. Although Hao Ran and his brothers were all proud of the name, they felt a little shy when Gu Ning complimented it in front of their faces. Mu Ku and Chu Pei Han arrived 25 minutes before the test ended. Although they were both academic, it was rare to finish the test within 75 minutes. Besides, they barely wrote down wrong answers. Gu Ning was faster than them only because she had her special power. Yu Mixi was the last one of them to arrive. She arrived 10 minutes before the test ended. When everyone got there, Hao Ran told them that they were going to the bar tonight. Hearing that, Chu Pei Han was the most excited. Although she had been to many bars, she had been there with her elder brother every time and her freedom had been limited. Mu Ku also agreed to go. Only Yu Mixi didn't know how to explain it to her family, so she couldn't go with them. Hao Ran told Yu Mixi she could tell her parents that it was a classmate's birthday party. If her parents wouldn't believe it, they could buy a birthday cake and pretended that they had a birthday party. Then, they could send some photos to her parents as the proof. A birthday cake wouldn't cost much, so they planned to eat it as dessert. Hao Ran's idea was approved by everyone. They all decided to do that. Even Gu Ning had to use that excuse for her mother, Gu Man, but Gu Man knew Gu Ning's friends, so it would be easier for Gu Ning to use that excuse. After the Chinese test ended, the teacher went back to the office and spoke with excitement about what Gu Ning had done to the other teachers. Everyone was amazed by the fact that Gu Ning had finished the paper within 45 minutes and all the results were correct. She was a genius. No one was more astonished than Gu Ning's head teacher, Zhang Qiuhua. She clearly knew Gu Ning's previous scores. They weren't terrible, but they were not good either. It was hard for Zhang Qiuhua to believe Gu Ning's sudden change. Did she cheat? There were other teachers who also knew about Gu Ning's previous scores, who believed so, but they found it was still hard to believe that she could get all the right answers by cheating. Had the questions been leaked? Zhang Chihua immediately called Gu Ning to ask her what had happened, in case her student made a terrible mistake. Gu Ning insisted that she did it all on her own. If the teachers didn't believe her, they could test her again. The next test was English. It took Gu Ning an even shorter time, only 20 minutes, to finish the paper, but she had to wait for another 10 minutes to hand in the paper. The teacher had doubt what Gu Ning had done at the last test, so he paid more attention to her this time. However, he didn't find any unusual behavior from Gu Ning. She just kept writing. What was even more shocking was that she finished the paper in 20 minutes. The paper remained clean with good handwriting. Unfortunately, he wasn't the English teacher, so he didn't know whether Gu Ning's answers were correct or not. If the answers were all correct, or at least 80% were correct, then Gu Ning had to be a genius. Most up-to-date NVELs are published on n0velg.co/m. Gu Ning immediately handed the paper in when 30 minutes had passed. The teacher purposely gave Gu Ning's English paper to the English teacher after the test. The answers were all correct. Gu Ning's English is very good, and her accent is also very authentic. I even feel embarrassed for myself. I asked her to translate a piece of text the other day. No one in the top class was able to fully translate it, or they would need a long time to do it. However, Gu Ning did it so effortlessly. If I hadn't looked at her oriental face, I would have believed that she was a foreigner. Although Chen Ming had picked on Gu Ning because of Chen Ziyao, he wasn't a person without a moral bottom line. Gu Ning's English had really impressed him, so now he spoke for her. He even went to the top classroom, the first class, and let other students try it. Unfortunately, no one could fully translate it even after a long time. What? She's that good? Hearing that, all the teachers were surprised. Wasn't she bad at studying before? No matter how hard they tried to think up a reasonable reason, they all failed at the end. Around 12 o'clock, Gu Ning received a call from Qin Yifan. The jewelry was done, so he asked when she would be free. Gu Ning was occupied today and tomorrow. She said that she would be there Sunday afternoon, or the next Monday, but Qin Yifan was somewhat eager to meet Gu Ning. He proposed bringing it to her at school to her since he was free. He would arrive after half an hour. Gu Ning wanted to refuse. She didn't want to bother him, but Qin Yifan insisted on coming to her. Gu Ning finally agreed. Gu Ning was eating in a restaurant outside of their school with her friends. She told Qin Yifan to find her in the restaurant. She didn't want to hide the fact that she knew Qin Yifan, so she had no intention to avoid them. However, they had tests today, and the free time at noon was limited. Thus she didn't wait for Qin Yifan to have a meal together. Qin Yifan wanted to meet Gu Ning now, but he forgot one important detail. That jewelry was worth over 100 million yuan. It wasn't safe to give it to a young girl directly like that. Gu Ning herself didn't care about that actually, so she didn't mind Qin Yifan coming right now. Half an hour later, Qin Yifan arrived with a wooden box as big as half a football. Everyone knew a friend of Gu Ning's would be here to give her something, but they had no idea who the person was. Thus when Qin Yifan appeared, other than Yu Mixi and Chu Peihan, the rest were all surprised, especially Qin Zixuan. Qin Zixuan immediately stood up from the sofa, and called, "Hi, my cousin Yifan." Gu Ning was astonished. She didn't expect that Qin Yifan and Qin Zixuan were cousins. "Hi, it's so nice to see you." Hao Ran, Zhang Tianping and Mu Ku all stood up, and greeted him politely. "Why are you here?" Qin Yifan was also surprised to see them. Although he knew they went to the same school as Gu Ning, he didn't expect that they all knew each other. After a few seconds, he understood it wasn't impossible. They studied in the same school, and were all seniors, so it was natural that they knew each other. However, Qin Zixuan and the boys felt that it was surprising. How did Gu Ning know Qin Yifan? "Please have a seat, you all," Gu Ning said. They all sat down. Qin Yifan knew that Gu Ning had no intention to avoid her friends, so she let him meet her here. Thus he gave the box to Gu Ning without hesitation. "Gu Ning, this is yours. I'll transfer the money for the rest of the jade into your account later." "Sure, thanks." Gu Ning took the box. "Gu Ning, what is this?" Chu Peihan fixed her eyes on that wooden box and asked with curiosity. Not only Chu Peihan, everyone else was curious as well. It's the jewelry Itsue Jade Store helped me make for my family, Gu Ning told them. Everyone suddenly lost their interest when they heard that it was jewelry. Because Qin Zixuan and others were here, Qin Yifan felt it was inconvenient to talk to Gu Ning too much. He also knew they had tests this afternoon, so he left after a while. Gu Ning and her friends went back to their classrooms too, and the rest of the tests began at 2 p.m. Gu Ning finished the papers within half an hour as well, without any hint of cheating. Gu Ning knew that it was hard for someone who knew that she had been bad at studying to accept her change, but true blue would never stain. Now she wasn't afraid to face her classmates and teachers. After the afternoon tests, Gu Ning left directly. It was just 4 p.m. The appointed time was 6 p.m. in the Yuyi restaurant on Yuyi Road. It took around 20 minutes to walk from Fenghua Luxury Mansion to the Yuyi restaurant, so Gu Man and others planned to leave their houses at 5 p.m. Thus Gu Ning went back home first. Discover EU chapters at novelby.co. She didn't run this time, but take a taxi instead. Within 20 minutes, she was back at Fenghua Luxury Mansion. Gu Ning had told her family that she had a monthly test today, so Gu Man and the rest were all surprised that she was home so early. Why are you home so early? Gu Man asked. I finished the tests, so I'm back, Gu Ning replied. Is it because you didn't know the answers? It's fine. We can keep trying, Gu Qing comforted. They never blamed Gu Ning for her performance, but always encouraged her, because they all knew that not every kid was born academic. Gu Ning didn't explain further. The results would be the best proof. A short while later, Jiang Xinyue got back home as well. She only had 2 classes in the afternoon, and she left her school at 4:05 p.m. She got home at 4:30 p.m. Everyone was ready to leave when it was 5 p.m., but Gu Ning stopped all of them. She said, why should we go there so early? We always get to the family meal earlier than them. And they are always late. I think it'll be fine if we just arrive on time. Well, Gu Man felt that it wasn't appropriate. I think Ning Ning is right. Why should we be there early and wait for them every time? Gu Qing immediately agreed. She sat back down again. Gu Man compromised at the end. Both Gu Man and Gu Qing deliberately didn't dress up. They were wearing the medium-level brand and looked normal. No one would know what the brand was if he or she wasn't familiar with clothing brands. Jiang Su was in the same style. As for Gu Ning, she was still in her casual suit. They didn't leave until 5:30 p.m. They walked to the Yuyi restaurant. When they arrived, it was 5 minutes away from 6 p.m., but they coincidentally met Gu Qingxiang's family outside. Gu Qingxiang's family included Gu Qingxiang, Lin Li Juan, Gu Qingxiang and the old lady. They were always late for the family meal. Gu Qingxiang was the richest one in the Gu family, so he was also the most powerful one. Therefore, he became arrogant and also believed that he was the star in their family. He was upset when he met Gu Man and others outside. Except for Gu Qingxiang, Lin Li Juan, Gu Xiaoxiao, and the old lady all changed their faces. Especially the old lady, she was still annoyed that Gu Ning had shouted at her last time. She immediately raised her voice in anger, Gu Ning the B***st** road. Who told you to be here? Go away immediately. The old lady had lost all her manners and was behaving like a crazy woman. All of a sudden, her voice attracted attention from people around. Although the crowd didn't know what was going on, they disdained the old lady's rude behavior. Gu Qingxiang was surprised by his mother and also felt embarrassed amid the others' people's looks. He called, Mom. He knew his mother never liked Gu Ning, neither did he. He hated and despised Gu Ning too. Every time they met, the old lady would humiliate Gu Ning, but he had never seen his mother get so mad. Gu Qingxiang had been busy these days, and he was seldom home, so he didn't know what had happened the other day. Meanwhile, Gu Man and others were all immediately in a rage. Gu Man felt like crying. She retorted, Mom, could you please be kind? Ning Ning is my daughter. She is not a B***st** road. Besides, it's my third brother who asked me to be here. The old lady didn't feel ashamed at all. Instead, she was more annoyed. She is a B***st**. I'll never admit that she is my granddaughter. If she stays, I'll leave right now. Mom, what is wrong with you? Can we just talk when we're in the private room? You're embarrassing me in front of everyone in public. Gu Qinxiang was a little displeased. No matter what, he was a man of a little fame in City F. His mother's behavior had obviously embarrassed him. However, the old lady was so mad that she didn't care about their faces at all. Moreover, she indeed was a bossy and domineering woman, who only cared about herself. She continued to snap at Gu Ning. What is wrong with you? You be *st*rd hit Xiao Xiao, but refused to apologize. You even yelled at me. You're insane. Gu Qinxiang was seldom home these days, so no one actually told him what had happened. Hearing the word **st**rd, Gu Ning, Gu Man and others were all displeased. Gu Ning threw a cold look at the old lady. The old lady was scared and struck dumb at once. Although Gu Qinxiang preferred to save his face, he lost control of his emotions since his daughter was involved. What? Gu Ning hit Xiao Xiao? Gu Qinxiang changed his face at short notice. His eyes were full of anger as he looked at Gu Ning. Gu Xiao Xiao criticized Gu Ning without delay. Yes. Dad, Gu Ning hit my head with a plate, then she slapped me several times. Grandma told her to apologize to me, but she refused to do so. Besides, she even yelled at Grandma and threatened Mom. After that, she gave Gu Ning a provocative look. She was afraid of Gu Ning, but now that her father was here as well, she wasn't afraid anymore. The crowd now all looked to Gu Ning with shock. What? She hit the girl with a plate and even slapped her. She refused to apologize, then yelled and threatened the older generation? If so, the young girl was very violent and rude. Some immediately had a bad impression of Gu Ning. However, some people, before it was confirmed, didn't immediately believe it. They still had doubts towards Gu Ning. Gu Man, what kind of a daughter do you have? How dare she to hit my daughter? Gu Qinxiang shouted at Gu Man. Gu Man was shocked by his shout. In the Gu family, everyone was afraid of Gu Qinxiang because he was the richest, most powerful and the eldest man in their family. Even Gu Qinyang, who worked in a national department, respected Gu Qinxiang very much. Gu Qinyang was an ordinary civil servant, not an important official. He couldn't compare with Gu Qinxiang. Although Gu Man was afraid of Gu Qinxiang, she would never yield once Gu Ning was involved. She retorted, Ning Ning hit Xiao Xiao only because Xiao Xiao humiliated Ning Ning first. So what? She hasn't been hurt physically anyway. She shouldn't slap my daughter. Gu Qinxiang didn't think it was wrong that Gu Xiao Xiao had humiliated Gu Ning. Gu Man was so mad that she almost fainted all of a sudden. She almost fell. Gu Ning immediately supported her mother and poured some power into her body. Although there wasn't much power in Gu Ning's jade eyes, it was enough to help Gu Man stabilize her breathing. Gu Man suddenly felt a cool airflow inside. Her breathing was immediately stabilized at once. Gu Man thought that it was strange, but didn't think about it any further because Gu Ning soon stopped. Gu Man believed that it was an illusion. How could you say that? Why should Ning Ning be treated in that way? Gu Qing was also mad. Even though she knew Gu Qinxiang was selfish, she didn't know that he could be so shameless. It was Xiao Xiao's fault for humiliating others, but Gu Ning should never hit her. Gu Qinxiang almost lost his patience. He added, besides, our mother told her to apologize. She refused, and even yelled at our mother. She is so rude. Gee. Gu Ning couldn't help sneering. She stared at Gu Qinxiang and said coldly, in that case, I can call you a B***st**rd and call your mother a shameless B***tch, and you also can't do anything about it? How dare you? Hearing that, Gu Qinxiang was in a rage. He screamed at Gu Ning, how dare you to say that? You are so rude. The old lady was also very irritated at the same time. What? How come I'm wrong to say that? When Gu Xiao Xiao said that to my face, she never thought about respecting my mother. Isn't she rude? Gu Ning argued. Gu Qinxiang suddenly didn't know what to say. Indeed, although Gu Man was senior to Gu Xiao Xiao did not respect Gu Man, but throughout the past 18 years, no one felt that it was wrong. Even Gu Qinxiang was speechless when Gu Ning said it out loud in public. The crowd now realized why Gu Ning hit the girl. All of the onlookers stood by Gu Ning's side. It was so rude to humiliate someone else's family. Even if her mother did something wrong, the young generation shouldn't humiliate the elder generation. Now, everyone disliked Gu Xiaoxiao. Insane, insane, insane. Your mother has done a shameful thing. Why can't we criticize her? You, the old lady said with rage. In her eyes, one who made a mistake deserved humiliation. Shut up, Gu Ning snapped at her. She threw the old lady a cold look. The old lady felt frightened and suddenly closed her mouth. Moreover, the old lady felt great pressure from Gu Ning. She almost couldn't breathe. Even those onlookers felt a little stressed from her coldness. You've insulted my mother for 18 years, isn't it enough? I really think that my mother is not your daughter. Otherwise, why do you hate her so much? Since you're the mother of my mother, I didn't want to be rude, but now, if you dare to bully my mother, then I'll let you pay for it. Anyway, you don't admit that I'm your granddaughter. Similarly, I will not admit that you're my grandmother. Thus it's useless to threaten me with morality, Gu Ning said icily. She had now put her cards on the table. Everyone was looking at the old lady with anger. She had humiliated her own daughter and granddaughter for 18 years. How vicious was she? You. The old lady had felt frightened by Gu Ning at first, then she trembled and almost lost her breath. Gu Qingxiang immediately supported his mother in case she fell down. Gu Ning even threatened her. Gu Qingxiang was shocked by Gu Ning's attitude. She was so different from the old self-abased girl. No, she wasn't. She was strong and confident enough to threaten the old lady now. Gu Qingxiang criticized with anger, Gu Ning, you're so rude. How can you talk to the elderly like that? Rude? It's all because of you shameless people. I'm a human being with dignity. I was quiet and polite before, but you always humiliated me. What I am doing now is only to defend my own dignity. The elderly? You don't deserve our respect. You have humiliated my mother for 18 years and called me AB*ST*RD for 18 years. It is my shame to have you as my family. If you want to win the respect of people, you must learn how to respect others first. Treat others the way you want to be treated. From now on, I won't endure your insults anymore. Gu Ning said with strong hate. Gu Qingxiang's face changed quickly. Gu Ning's word made him feel guilty and annoyed at the same time. He couldn't deny that Gu Ning's words were reasonable, but he also felt embarrassed. Well put. At that time, a delightful female voice sounded. Gu Ning immediately recognized who she was by her voice. It must be In Qian. Seeing In Qian, Gu Ning realized that she had forgotten to pay the admission fee back to her. Although she knew In Qian wouldn't care, she still felt a little embarrassed. Gu Ning, I'm with you. Never stay a coward, but stand up for yourself. In Qian supported Gu Ning. Get the L-test vls@v/e/l/buy.co. It was beyond her imagination that Gu Ning had such a complicated and terrible family background. In Qian felt annoyed for Gu Ning since she believed that they were friends. In Qian, what a coincidence. Gu Ning said. Dr. In, Gu Man and others greeted her politely. This is our family issue. Please stay out of it, miss. Gu Qingxiang was even more irritated to see that an outsider had interrupted them. Well, I think that Gu Ning doesn't admit that she is a part of your family, right? So how come it's a family issue? Besides, I'm talking to Gu Ning, not you. It has nothing to do with your family, In Qian retorted. Gu Qingxiang was speechless again. However, before he could say another word, another voice interrupted him. Qian, what are you doing? A charming male voice sounded. Then, a tall handsome man walked over. He was around 30 and was in a suit with the air of an elite, but not arrogance. What else can I do? My friend is being insulted. I'm helping her. In Qian said unkindly, but it was not aimed at the man. Seeing the man, Gu Qingxiang immediately put a smile on his face. He flattered, Oh, it's so nice to meet you, Executive Liu. Are you here for dinner? What a coincidence. Let me be the host, please. The man had to be powerful to be able to make Gu Qingxiang flatter him so obviously. No, before the man could open his mouth, and Qian immediately rejected him. She was apparently pissed off by Gu Qingxiang. Gu Qingxiang wanted to criticize Qian, but remembering that the two came together, he shut his mouth. Although he didn't know the relationship between them, they were either friends or girlfriend and boyfriend, so Gu Qingxiang wasn't willing to have bad blood with Qian before the man. Gu Qingxiang turned to Lu Jiangyu, waiting for his answer. Sorry, Chairman Gu, I'm here with my friend today. It's not very convenient, Lu Jiangyu refused indirectly. Well, what a shame. Gu Qingxiang didn't insist, he didn't dare to insist. Lu Jiangyu had a hotel construction project in hand and Gu Qingxiang was trying to get it. He was on the waiting list now actually. Lu Jiangyu would choose 1 out of 5 companies. It was a pretty intense competition. Therefore, Gu Qingxiang didn't dare to aggravate him. And Qian immediately invited Gu Ning and her family. Gu Ning, come and have dinner with us. You promised to buy me a meal, but I've waited for so many days. You didn't call me once. And Qian almost criticized Gu Ning. Gu Ning explained with embarrassment, I have many classes. I did plan to call you when I was free. It doesn't matter whether you buy me a meal or not, but we're friends. We should gather together if we have time. Don't wait for the next time. Let's have the meal together now. Oh, Gu Ning's mother, aunt and uncle, you all must come with us, and Qian said with determination. She had heard the old lady's words. If Gu Ning stayed, the old lady would leave right now. Besides, they just had a quarrel in public. It was impossible for them to sit down and eat together again. And Qian didn't plan to help Gu Ning out, but she really wanted to have a meal with her. But Gu Ning didn't want to bother Qian and Lu Jiangyu. And Qian knew what Gu Ning was thinking. She said, you don't need to worry. He won't mind. She meant Lu Jiangyu of course. And Qian gave Lu Jiangyu a knowing look at the same time. Lu Jiangyu received her message. Although he wore a resigned smile, he did not mind at all. He then opened his mouth, Miss Gu, please dine together with us. He obviously only invited Gu Ning and her family, not Gu Qingxiang's family. He didn't know what had just happened, but he understood that there were 2 different sides here. And Qian obviously stood by Gu Ning's side, so he had to agree with her. All right. Since we're already here, we need to have dinner before we go back home. Seeing Lu Jiangyu was fine with Qian's invitation, Gu Ning answered at the end. Mom, aunt, uncle, Xinyue, let's go dine with Dr. In. Gu Ning said to her family. Although Gu Man and the rest all didn't want to bother someone else, Gu Ning had accepted, so they agreed as well. Gu Qingxiang, however, was totally annoyed that Lu Jiangyu was willing to have a meal with Gu Ning and her family, while he had been rejected. He now hated Qian very much. However, he didn't dare to say another word. Lin Lijuan and Gu Xiaoxiao were also mad, but they knew that the man was an important figure, so they closed their mouths too. However, because they knew that the man was special, Lin Lijuan and Gu Xiaoxiao were even more displeased. Gu Ning was only a poor girl. How could she know that Executive Lu? Meanwhile, the old lady suddenly erupted, Hey, what is wrong with you? My son invited you to dine with him. You rejected, so how could you eat with the B*ST*RD? You. In the old lady's eyes, her son was a big boss, while Gu Ning was merely a poor girl as well as a B*ST*RD. Mom, shut your mouth. Gu Qingxiang was shocked. He immediately criticized, you can't talk to Executive Lu like that. Find you chapters on nv/lbi.com. Gu Qingxiang seldom criticized his mother unless it was important. So the old lady realized that she had done something wrong. She immediately shut up, but also felt stressed because of the look from Gu Ning. Gu Qingxiang apologized to Lu Jiangyu at once, Executive Lu, I'm so sorry. My mom is a trouble in my family. Please forgive us. I'm fine. However, your mother swore at a young girl like that. It was too rude and too vicious. Lu Jiangyu was apparently unhappy to witness the old lady's behavior. My mom is too old to behave herself. I'll talk to her later, Gu Qingxiang said without delay. This is the last time. If I ever hear you call me a B*ST*RD again, you'll pay for it, Gu Ning warned the old lady. She then ignored her, walking inside with others. The old lady almost fainted from anger, but she did not dare to say another word. After they were gone, she then opened her mouth, how could she do that? Gu Qingxiang snapped, enough. I'm on the waiting list of a significant project in Executive Li's hand. I have to maintain a good relationship with him. How dare you argue with him? If he gets mad and removes my name from the list, I'll lose a fortune. Hearing that, the old lady was shocked. She asked with worry, what should we do now? It was all because of the B*TCH Gu Ning. If it hadn't been for her. Even now, the old lady still didn't realize that it was her fault. She never believed that she could make mistakes. Therefore it must be Gu Ning's fault. The old lady was so selfish. Mom, could you stop blaming others for what you've done? Didn't you make mistakes? Gu Qingxiang lost his patience and raised his voice. Although he hated Gu Ning too, he also knew that his mother was the cause of the mess. How come it's my fault? Gu Ning did it. If she hadn't been here, it all wouldn't have happened, the old lady retorted with anger. Gu Qingxiang was speechless. The old lady was utterly unreasonable. However, since Gu Ning knows them, you can get Gu Ning to help you with the project in front of Executive Lu, the old lady said airily. People around who hadn't left yet were astonished. The old lady was really shameless. She had just sworn at the girl and wasn't willing to admit that the girl was her granddaughter. Now she thought it was granted that Gu Ning would help them. Everyone looked at the old lady with intense dislike, but the old lady was too shameless to notice. Gu Qingxiang's family, however, were all cheered up by the idea. They were all selfish people and didn't believe that there was anything wrong with it. If Gu Ning had known about their idea, she would have laughed out of anger. She had never met such shameless people before. Gu Ning didn't actually know Lu Zhengyu. Even if they did know each other, she had no reason to help Gu Qingxiang. It would already be very kind of her not to get Lu Zhengyu to delete Gu Qingxiang's name from the waiting list. Dr. In, we left the hospital in a hurry last time. I didn't thank you enough for your help. I'm so sorry, Gu Man said to In Qian. Please don't say that. Gu Ning and I are friends, In Qian replied. Even though, Gu Man still felt a little guilty. She said, Dr. In, please let us buy the meal this time. It's really fine. Please let my friend buy the meal. And Qian immediately rejected. She tried her best to show her kindness. Absolutely not, Gu Man argued. She then turned to Gu Ning. Ning Ning, say something. And Qian, please let us do the treating. Gu Ning said. Actually, even though Gu Man hadn't said that, Gu Ning would let Jiang Su pay the bill secretly later. And Qian knew she couldn't reject anyway, so she compromised. Because of what had just happened outside, Gu Qingxiang's family were losing their patience waiting. Qingxiang's family was always late, and they were used to it, but Gu Man and Gu Qing's families were never late. Instead, they were always the ones who came early. Now however, it was more than 10 minutes past 6 and they still hadn't showed up. Gu Qingxiang's family felt displeased. All west ch.rs on n.o/vli/n/.cm. Gu Qingxiang had a family of 4. His wife, Wen Yulan, and twin children. The elder sister was Gu Yining, and the younger brother was Gu Qingshi. They were both 14 in the 8th grade. Both Gu Yining and Gu Qingshi were good-looking kids with bad characters. They would probably behave themselves in front of strangers, but in front of the Gu family, they would be themselves. They were like Gu Xiaoxiao, who enjoyed bullying Gu Ning and Jiang Xinyue. Therefore, they had a good relationship with Gu Xiaoxiao. What is wrong with our second aunt and the family of our fourth aunt? We invite them to have dinner with us, but they are so late. What do they think they are? Gu Qingshi said with anger. He apparently didn't blame Gu Qingxiang's family. Indeed, Gu Qingxiang was the boss in the Gu family, and no one dared to blame him. Gu Qingxiang was the richest one among them anyway. Exactly. I think we shouldn't have invited them at the very beginning. I feel so embarrassed to have such a group of poor relatives. Gu Yining said with disdain. Both Gu Qingxiang and Wen Yulan didn't criticize their children for their unkind remarks. They both actually had the same idea, and they would never blame their children. Children learned the way of behaving from their parents. If their parents didn't show any respect to others, they basically would do the same thing. Like what had happened when Gu Qingxiang, Gu Qing, Gu Qingyang and Gu Man had been intimate sisters and brothers in their childhood. Under the influence of their mother, the boys had started to despise the girls. However, the most important reason was that they were selfish people. Their father didn't think that boys were better than girls, and had told his sons to treat the girls well, but their father had had to work hard to support his family. He hadn't been home often, let alone having time to educate his children. Otherwise Gu Man and Gu Qing wouldn't have been bullied for a long time. Gu Qingyang called Gu Qing. He criticized her once the phone was answered. "What is wrong with you? Look at the clock. Do you know what time is it now? Do you need us to call you twice to have dinner together? If you don't want to come, just tell us. We won't wait for you." Gu Qingyang's attitude was terrible. In the past time, Gu Qing would tolerate it, but now she was in a rage. She remembered what she had been through for her last half-lifetime, and she couldn't stand it any longer. She raised her voice and shouted, "Couldn't you be kind to us? Couldn't you find out the reason first? Couldn't you stop blaming us for everything? We've been early for the meal every time, while Gu Qingxiang is always late. You never said anything about that. I know we're poor, and you dislike us. I understand, but this time is different." It was Mom who wouldn't allow Ningning to come. She even argued badly with us outside. We absolutely stand by Ningning's side. If Ningning can't come, we won't either. After that, Gu Qing hung up directly. Gu Qingyang was struck dumb. He never expected that Gu Qing would be so mad, and he suddenly didn't know how to react. Because Gu Qing's voice was loud, when Yulan, who was sitting aside, also heard clearly. The old lady wouldn't allow Gu Ning to come? They even had a fierce argument? What had happened? They knew that the old lady never liked Gu Ning, and she always humiliated Gu Ning every time they met, but she had never been so irritated before. Had Gu Ning done something that aggravated the old lady? As they felt confused, the door was pushed open, and Gu Qingxiang's family walked inside, and everyone seemed displeased. Especially the old lady, she was still muttering with obvious dissatisfaction. She walked in and said directly, "Tell the waiter we're ready to order. Gu Man and Gu Qing's families won't come." It sounded like Gu Man and the family of Gu Qing should be blamed. What happened? Gu Qingyang asked. The old lady immediately told him everything, along with what had happened between Gu Ning and Gu Xiaoxiao. She obviously didn't tell all the truth, but attacked Gu Ning all the time. What? Gu Ning slapped Xiaoxiao? Gu Qingyang's family were all surprised by Gu Ning's change. It was so hard for them to believe it. Gu Ning was always behaved like a chicken and never dared to raise her voice in their eyes. How was it possible that she hit Xiaoxiao? Although they also believed that it was Gu Xiaoxiao and the old lady's fault to call Gu Ning the bastard, they thought it was Gu Ning who had done the worst things. New N0VL chapters are published on N0V/E/LBIN/co/M. After that, the old lady told them that she planned to get Gu Ning to help Gu Qingxiang with the project. Her shameless confidence astonished Gu Qingyang and his wife. Even they felt embarrassed for the old lady's behavior. The old lady was totally insane. Although Gu Qingyang and his wife despised Gu Man and Gu Ning too, they weren't willing to turn to them for help after having a terrible quarrel with them, but it had nothing to do with them. They didn't want to be involved either, so they focused on ordering afterward. At the same time, Gu Ning and her friends were also ordering dishes. "Gu Ning, tomorrow is the weekend. Let's go shopping together," and Qian said. "I'm leaving for City G tomorrow, sorry," Gu Ning answered. On the way here, Gu Ning had already told Gu Man that she was going to City G, and that she would be attending a classmate's birthday party later. Gu Ning was now completely able to make decisions on her own. Gu Man and others had no reason to disagree. "What are you going to do in City G?" And Qian followed up. "To deal with something." Gu Ning didn't tell the details, so Qian also stopped asking. "Fine. Then, we can hang out the next time. However, when you're free, you must call me or text me sometimes. I don't have many friends in City F. I feel so bored," and Qian complained. "Sure," Gu Ning said. It was her fault for forgetting to keep in touch with Qian. During the meal, everyone was happy and the atmosphere was harmonious. Qian didn't mention what had just happened at all. She knew that it was Gu Ning's personal affairs. After the meal, it was already 8 p.m. Gu Man and the other walked back home after saying goodbye to Qian and Lu Jianyu, while Gu Ning took a taxi heading to the V5 bar on Huanla Road to meet her friends there. Huanla Road wasn't far away from Yuyi Road. Both of the roads were near the downtown. It took Gu Ning only a dozen minutes to get there by car. Yuyi Road wasn't broad, but even though it was a small road, it was known as the bar road with many people and cars around. Gu Ning knew the number of the private room, so she went straight inside. In the private room, everyone was present with a cake, but there was one man out of Gu Ning's expectation. It was Qin Yifan. Gu Ning was so surprised that Qin Yifan as a mature adult was willing to hang out with those teenagers, but she was also happy to see him. "Hi, what a surprise!" Gu Ning greeted him. "Hi. Well, I'm free anyway, so I decided to come as well. Do you mind?" Qin Yifan said airily, but he was truly nervous that Gu Ning would mind. "Of course not," Gu Ning said. Hearing that, Qin Yifan was greatly relieved. He had actually known that Gu Ning would come to the bar, but it was also a coincidence. Qin Yifan and Qin Zixuan were close cousins. Qin Zixuan's father worked in politics, and Qin Yifan was in need of Qin Zixuan's father's help, so he had visited Qin Zixuan's family. During the meal, Qin Zixuan hadn't gotten home yet. Qin Yifan had then asked his father why. He then found out that Qin Zixuan had eaten with his schoolmates and was going to have fun at the bar that night. Qin Yifan had then thought of Gu Ning. He had called Qin Zixuan and asked where he was casually. Qin Zixuan hadn't been thinking further and told him everything. When it had been confirmed that Gu Ning would be there, Qin Yifan's heart had lost a beat. He had immediately said that he was bored and felt like coming as well. Qin Zixuan hadn't rejected. Qin Yifan wasn't a stranger after all, and they often gathered together with Hao Ran and other boys. Both Gu Ning and Yumixi ordered fruit wine without much alcohol, which wasn't as strong as beer. Therefore they wouldn't get drunk, but Chu Pei Han had the same vodka mixed with Sprite as the boys. The alcohol was strong. They were playing games. Chu Pei Han had lost many times, but she remained clear. It seemed that Chu Pei Han was good at drinking. Although Qin Yifan was having the same drinks as the boys, he didn't play with them. Because of their age gap, they didn't get along very well. Besides, he wanted to talk with Gu Ning more, but Gu Ning was enjoying chatting with Yumixi, so Qin Yifan wasn't able to keep Gu Ning talking with him. He could only talk to her once in a while. In Fanghua Luxury Mansion, only Gu Man and Gu Qing were in Gu Qing's home, while Jiang Xinyue and Jiang Su were in their home busy doing their own stuff. Gu Man and Gu Qing were watching TV. They laughed at the funny plot and already forgot what had happened this afternoon. They didn't care about the Gu family any longer, so they hadn't been affected, but at that time, Gu Qingxiang called Gu Man and Gu Qing changed their faces at once. Why did he call? Although they didn't know the reason, they knew it must be something bad. Besides, Gu Man had broken off their connection today. Thus she didn't answer the call. Her phone rang continuously. Gu Man eventually turned it off directly. In Gu Qingxiang's place, the family all sat in the living room with an unpleasant face, because Gu Man didn't answer the phone. Gu Qingxiang was annoyed that Gu Man refused to answer his calls, but Gu Man had turned it off at the end. Gu Qingxiang was so mad that he threw the phone heavily onto the sofa. She won't answer the phone, the old lady frowned tightly, and said with annoyance. She turned the phone off. Gu Qingxiang raised his voice. What? She turned it off? How dare she? The old lady was irritated. In her eyes, Gu Man should always abase herself before her. Why don't you call Gu Qing? Lin Lijuan proposed. Hearing that, Gu Qingxiang immediately called Gu Qing. Seeing Gu Qingxiang's call, Gu Qing knew he must be calling for Gu Man your F48 stories on /o/v/lbn.cm. Although Gu Qing stood by Gu Man, she personally didn't have many arguments with Gu Qingxiang. Thus she answered. Besides, she also wanted to know the reason why Gu Qingxiang called Gu Man. She wanted to be prepared. Gu Qing, is Gu Man with you? The minute Gu Qing answered the phone, Gu Qingxiang opened his mouth and said with an unfriendly tone. No, Gu Qing said. Call Gu Man and get her to call me back, Gu Qingxiang ordered. Gu Qing felt like laughing. They always took them as their servants and ordered them to do everything like they were their masters. Gu Qingxiang was used to it, but Gu Qing was mad. She asked, for what? It's none of your business. Just follow my order, Gu Qingxiang replied. I can tell her that you called, but I won't force her to call you back, Gu Qing said, then she hung up directly with anger. After a break, she said to Gu Man, our eldest brother wants to talk to you. I don't think that he has anything good on his mind. I won't talk to him, Gu Man said. No matter what happened to Gu Qingxiang, it had nothing to do with her. Unless her mother had an accident, then she would fulfill her duty. Gu Qingxiang was annoyed once more, because Gu Qing had hung up on him. He couldn't believe that Gu Qing dared to do that. I don't think Gu Man will call you back. Why don't we go and find her at her work tomorrow? Lin Lijuan said. Gu Qingxiang agreed. Since Gu Man wouldn't answer his call, she was unlikely to call him back. Then you go find her tomorrow, Gu Qingxiang said to Lin Lijuan. In the V5 bar. Around 10 p.m., Gu Ning received a message. She had a look. It was from Leng Xiaoting, but she had changed his name into the large iceberg. There was a faint smile on her lips. She knew that Leng Xiaoting wanted the gun back, but she didn't plan to give it back to him easily. She wanted to let him pay for it. She didn't want to hurt him, but just wanted to have a little fun. She opened the message. The large iceberg, when are you free tomorrow? I'll take it back. Gu Ning ain't free tomorrow. The large iceberg, then when are you free? Gu Ning, no idea. Leng Xiaoting didn't send a message back for a long time. Gu Ning was slightly pissed off. Was he mad? She thought. If he was mad, he would be so easy to annoy. How could he be so cold? Wasn't he supposed to be friendly and even beg her for the gun? What's up? Qin Yifan noticed Gu Ning was texting. She was happy at first, then suddenly looked displeased. Qin Yifan felt uneasy somehow. Nothing, Gu Ning answered. She laid her phone on the table, but she was slightly unhappy. She drank the other half of the fruit wine, then she poured another glass of it. Seeing that, Qin Yifan frowned a little. He sensed that something must be wrong, but it wasn't convenient for him to ask. Actually, Leng Xiaoting wasn't mad. He simply didn't know how to reply. He wasn't a man who was skillful at chatting. Gu Ning said that she had no idea, what else could he possibly say? Su Jinchen, who sat aside, glanced at Leng Xiaoting, who was texting, from time to time. He was so curious to know whether he was texting with Gu Ning and what they were talking about. However, he didn't dare to ask, or have a look. He felt so uncomfortable with his burning curiosity. Leng Xiaoting gave him a cold glance. Su Jinchen immediately sat straight back. After a long time, Leng Xiaoting sent a message out again. When can you be free? I won't be staying long in City F. Gu Ning saw a new message coming in. Qin Yifan saw it too, but he only saw the sender's name was the large iceberg. Who was the large iceberg? It seemed like a man's nickname. Gu Ning took her phone and clicked it open. Although she intended to cause him some troubles, she didn't want to go too far. It was her fault after all. Besides, she had a good impression of military officers, or she admired them. Even though Leng Xiaoting was cold, he was so extraordinarily handsome, which also left a great impression on Gu Ning. She then texted, Monday. Buy me a great meal before getting the gun. Leng Xiaoting received the message. Without further thinking, he sent an affirmative answer back. The gun was the most important thing in his eyes. After that, Gu Ning was delighted again. Qin Yifan felt very curious but was nervous at the same time. He didn't know what Gu Ning had spoken about with the man, but it seemed like a boyfriend and girlfriend who got back together after an argument. Qin Yifan still didn't fully know whether he fell in love with Gu Ning, so he didn't say anything. Shouting, I've never seen you holding the phone and sending messages all the time. Who did you text? Su Jinchen couldn't help but ask. He wanted to find out whether it was Gu Ning. A human being, Leng Xiaoting answered. Su Jinchen was speechless. A human being? Of course he knew it was a human being. The point was, who was the human being? Then who is the human being? Su Jinchen tried again. Why do you have to know? Leng Xiaoting ignored Su Jinchen standing up and walked to the stairs. Su Jinchen clenched his teeth with upset. It was so hard to find out about Leng Xiaoting's little secret. All of a sudden, an idea dawned on Su Jinchen. He said, "Oh, I encountered Gu Ning on my way running in the morning yesterday. She is so funny. I think I kind of like her." Hearing that, Lin Xiaoting stopped for a second, but just a second. Then he was gone without saying a word. Although Su Jinchen couldn't see Lin Xiaoting's face, he assumed that there must be something going on between Gu Ning and him because he had stopped for a second. Gu Ning and her friends didn't stay in the bar for too long. Their activity at the bar ended at 11 p.m. However, 11 p.m. was exactly when the nightlife began, so Chu Peihan proposed to have night snacks. She knew a place with delicious roasted fish. Gu Ning admired Chu Peihan's outstanding ability to drink. She was even able to stay clear after she had drunk so much. She simply felt a little dizzy, but was still clear-minded. Up.dfrm no/v/e/lb I n.co/m. Since 11 p.m. wasn't very late and it wasn't easy for them to gather together, they all agreed to go. They took a taxi heading to the roasted fish diner. It wasn't far away, so they arrived after a few minutes. They had no idea whether the roasted fish here was truly as delicious as Chu Peihan had said, but the diner seemed extremely popular. The roasted fish must be good. The diner was super crowded with people and tables inside and outside. There were a few diners around, but no one was more crowded than this one. On their way here, Chu Peihan had already called to reserve a table. If they hadn't been so lucky, they wouldn't have a table to sit around. Their table was near the door outside. Half an hour later, the roasted fish was on the table. Exactly like what Chu Peihan had said, the roasted fish smelt so good. While they were eating night snacks, everyone except Gu Ning and Yu Mixi kept on drinking. Seeing that everyone was still able to remain clear, Gu Ning didn't want to stop them from drinking in case they would get upset. "Ning Ning, could you please go with me to the washroom?" Yu Mixi asked Gu Ning quietly. "Sure," Gu Ning answered. She stood up and walking towards the washroom with Yu Mixi. When they came out, because the floor was a little slippery, Yu Mixi accidentally slipped. She knocked into a man, and the glass held in the man's hand fell down on the ground. "Sorry, I'm so sorry," Yu Mixi immediately apologized, but the man was clearly displeased. He swore at Yu Mixi loudly, "Duf king have eyes?" His shout raised a lot of attention from people in the diner. However, the next second, the man noticed Yu Mixi's and Gu Ning's beautiful faces. He changed his attitude at once, ogling and flirting. "Hey, beauty, come and drink with us. Then I'll forgive you." "Come on," the other men around the same table echoed. "We don't drink, but I can buy you a box of drinks. How about that?" Gu Ning didn't want to cause more trouble, and planned to pay money for it. "Whoa! What a generous beauty! We don't lack drinks. We want girls," the man rejected. "Exactly, we don't care about drinks at all. We can totally afford it. We want you both to drink with us," another man said. "What if we say no?" Gu Ning asked calmly. It seemed that she was not afraid or nervous at all. The man was upset hearing that. He sneered and threatened, "No? It's not up to you right now. Do you think you can fight against us?" Gu Ning was slightly mad now. Although Yu Mixi had knocked into him first, she hadn't done it on purpose. Besides, she had already apologized. A well-educated man would normally forgive that, but the man clearly wasn't. If so, Gu Ning didn't want to waste time on them. "Fine. However, I don't like to drink inside the diner. It's too airless. Why don't we go outside and drink at my table?" Gu Ning said provocatively. "No problem. Let's go." The man had no idea what was on Gu Ning's mind right now. They never believed that those girls were able to deal with them. Moreover, they were also irritated by Gu Ning's challenge. "Pay your bill first before coming out," Gu Ning said. She didn't want to pay the bill for them if they ran away later. "Sure," the man answered. He paid the bill right away and followed Gu Ning, stepping outside. Although Yu Mixi was terrified, she wasn't worried at all. Let alone whether these men could beat Gu Ning or not, Chu Peihan and the boys were outside too. These men would learn their lesson for sure. Chu Peihan and the boys saw Gu Ning and Yu Mixi coming along with several men. They were curious. Were they Gu Ning's friends? Everyone believed so. Those men panicked a little when they finally found out that there were many more people outside other than the two girls. "Boss, are they your friends?" Hao Ran asked. "Mixie knocked into this man accidentally. The man wanted us to drink with them. We refused and proposed to buy them a box of drinks, but they weren't willing to accept. If we don't drink with them, they won't let us leave. Thus we had to accept," Gu Ning explained airily, but her words were all against the man's behavior. Hearing that, everyone was displeased. "Since they want to drink, let's be their good company." That sentence was full of viciousness. Those men weren't idiots. They immediately knew that they had made a terrible choice. The man who was their head said nervously, "I don't think that's necessary." No, we've had enough." Then, they ran away quickly. Gu Ning didn't stop them, because that was exactly what she wanted. If it could be dealt with in an easy way, she would do it. "Ha ha. Cowards!" Hao Ran mocked. "They're smart not to fight with us," Qin Zixuan said. "Ning is a nice girl. If I had been there, I would have punched them with my fists already," Chu Peihan said. She waved her fist, like she was going to hit someone. "I think Gu Ning is clever to bring them out and scare them away. They're two young girls. What if the men had bullied them?" Qin Yifan said. He still was nervous about what had just happened. "Haha," hearing that, everyone snorted with laughter. Hao Ran said, "Impossible. Our boss has easily knocked Xishuan, Tianping and me down. It's super easy for our boss to beat them to the ground." "Exactly, our boss didn't want to cause trouble, so she scared them away. Otherwise they would have suffered a lot," Qin Zixuan added. "What? Gu Ning had easily beaten Hao Ran and the boys down on the ground?" Qin Yifan rounded his eyes. He couldn't believe his ears, and asked, "Really? Gu Ning had easily beaten you all down on the ground?" "Yes. That's why she is our boss," Zhang Tianping replied. Getting the affirmative answer, Qin Yifan took a long breath in. He looked at Gu Ning with surprise and admiration. "It's unbelievable that you're so powerful." 7-sit envelb/n.c/m for L test vels. He clearly knew about the ability of Hao Ran and the two other boys. Each one of them could fight against about 5 ordinary men. However, Gu Ning alone was able to beat them down so easily. Although Gu Ning was strong, and it was good to know no one could bully her, Qin Yifan felt bitter in his heart. He now lost the qualification to protect her. Gu Ning smiled but didn't say a word. They continued to eat and drink afterwards. When they were about to separate, it was already 1 a.m. Chu Peihan didn't want to go back home. She wanted to stay in the hotel with the rest of the girls to chat with each other. Gu Ning thought for a while then agreed. She had already put away everything she needed in the telepathic eye space. Mixie also told her families that she would be safe, so it was fine for her to stay out for a night too. Qin Yifan had the intention to send Gu Ning home, but the girls weren't going back home tonight. Therefore, he could only drive those 3 girls to the hotel. Hao Ran and the boys were still clear even after they had drunk so much. They went back home as well. The next day, Gu Ning got up at 6:30 a.m. She needed to catch her plane at 8:30 a.m. Mixie immediately got up after Gu Ning. She was going to help her father at home. Chu Peihan let them leave first. She hadn't had enough sleep yet. Thus Gu Ning and Mixie left earlier. On her way to the airport, Gu Ning called Zhou Xinghong and told him the time that she would land. Around 6:40 a.m., Mixie got home. Her family ran a small breakfast stand. There were continuously people coming to have breakfast at that time. Seeing that her father was being busy, Mixie immediately went up and helped him. Mixie's father was just in his early 40s, but due to years of labor work, he seemed like a 50-year-old man. "Cece, why are you home so early?" her father asked. Mixie's father hoped that Mixie could make friends and hang out with them sometimes. He didn't want to see that his daughter only studied or helped him all day at home. Without a good network, she couldn't make any difference in the future. Gu Ning arrived at the airport of City G at 9:40 a.m. Zhou Xinghong was already waiting for her at the exit. Seeing Gu Ning, Zhou Xinghong's eyes brightened up as if he had seen gold. In Zhou Xinghong's eyes, Gu Ning was the gold. No, she was more valuable than gold. Gu Ning had brought him much more than money. She was the one who found his talent. Gu Ning had rescued him from desperation and helped him live a meaningful life. He respected Gu Ning deeply from his heart. Zhou Xinghong immediately came towards her with warmth. "Boss, nice to see you again." "Hi, Uncle Zhou, nice to see you." "I hope you haven't waited for me for a long time," Gu Ning said. "No, I've just waited for you around 10 minutes, Zhou Xinghong said airily. Actually, he had been waiting for Gu Ning for almost an hour, but it was nothing for him. Gu Ning knew that he told a white lie. She didn't want to hurt his feelings either, so she didn't say anything further, but followed Zhou Xinghong to the parking lot. Zhou Xinghong bought a Mercedes-Benz. It was the same as Jiang Su's and was around 500,000 yuan. The elder generation did like Mercedes-Benz very much. Although Gu Ning had given him a 1 million yuan budget, Zhou Xinghong didn't want to spend that much money on a car, so he only bought a car at the price of around 500,000 yuan. However, the price wasn't low either. Many people with hundreds of millions in wealth would drive a car at the same price too. When they drove out of the airport, Zhou Xinghong reported to Gu Ning, "Boss, I've already visited the Street of Stone gambling. Many shops have cut out jade last week, so their sales are very good these days, especially the one we've been to. Thus all the shops have gotten a new batch of raw materials in several days ago." "Very well. Let's go to the supermarket first. I need to change. Then we can dine before heading to the antique market," Gu Ning said. "Sure, boss," Zhou Xinghong answered. Then he added, "Boss, the store contract has been signed. It's under renovation now. The processing plant is ready with security and anti-theft measures as well. The equipment, designers and carvers are also in place. They were going to produce jewelry in large number. And it was impossible to do it all by hand, so they needed machines. The price of jewelry made by machines was lower than the price of jewelry made by hand. Gu Ning planned to use machines to carve the medium-level jade, while the high-level and top-level jade would be carved by hand. In that case, they could make the most of high-level and top-level jade. Great. Let the designers meet the carvers in the processing plant this afternoon. We'll start running tomorrow. We need to prepare enough products before we open the store, Gu Ning said. Sure, Zhou Xinghong answered. Oh, by the way, could you please tell me about the grudge between you and Xiaoping? Gu Ning asked. She knew that she was adding insult to the injury, but if she didn't know what had happened, she couldn't help him properly. Indeed, hearing the name of Xiaoping, Zhou Xinghong immediately wore an unpleasant face filled with hatred, but he tried to curb his anger. He didn't blame Gu Ning for bringing it up. Since Gu Ning had asked, he didn't want to hide. After he calmed himself down, he opened his mouth. Xiaoping and I were born in the same place. We've known each other since we were young. However, we didn't get along well. Many children hated me in my village because I was the boy who was always getting complimented by others. Xiaoping hated me to the most. He even found someone to beat me. Then, I went to university, while he failed the exam. He went to work afterwards, and we didn't meet for at least 10 years. We met each other again about 10 years ago. By then, my company was slightly profitable, while he was still living in poverty. He turned to me for help. I agreed without further thought. He was clever, but not honest. There was always jewelry missing in my store. I found out that he was the thief in the end, so I laid him off. After that, he left City G. I had no idea where he was going. A year ago, he came back. He found me and bought me a meal. He even apologized to me about his previous bad behavior. Although I didn't want to have a close relationship with him, we kept in touch. Half a year later, we got along well, but I still kept a polite distance from him. Half a year earlier, he said that one of his friends wanted to sell a batch of jade, and he asked for my opinion. I lacked jade at that time, so I went to have a look. The batch of jade was medium-level and lower-level jade. They were real and cost 50 million yuan. However, I didn't have that much money. I needed to take out a mortgage. Xiaoping then agreed to let me write him an IOU. I was badly in need of the jade, so I wrote it. However, the bank refused to loan me anything. Meanwhile, the batch of jade suddenly became fake. There were problems with my finances as well. I then realized that I was trapped. Although I knew it has been aided and abetted, I didn't have any proof, so I could do nothing. In the end, I had to sell my company to Xiaoping. Get the latest chapters on n/velbin.com. I told you that I would protect my friends. Since we're already friends, I'll help you grab Zhoufu jewelry back. If you don't want the brand anymore, we can destroy it, Gu Ning said. Hearing that, Zhou Xinghong felt touched deeply. He thanked gratefully, "Boss, thank you so much." He believed in Gu Ning. It took around 40 minutes to arrive at the downtown shopping mall from the airport. It was around lunchtime, so Gu Ning told Zhou Xinghong to order food in the food court while she went to change first. They planned to eat before going to the antique market. Gu Ning bought a set of fashionable female clothing. She was wearing a black dress with black stockings and a beige woolen coat. She also put on a pair of black high-heel shoes and seemed more attractive and outstanding. Then she went to get a new curly hairstyle with fine makeup done. She now looked like a mature and charming woman. She was totally different from the female student before. Therefore, when Gu Ning pushed the door of the private room open and walked in, Zhou Xinghong couldn't recognize her. He said, "Miss, I'm sorry you probably entered the wrong room." Haha, Gu Ning couldn't help laughing. She said, "Uncle Zhou, it's me. I'm Gu Ning." What? Zhou Xinghong was shocked. He explained later, "Boss, I can't recognize you now." "That's exactly what I want. I'm going to cut out a lot of jade later, and I want to disguise myself," Gu Ning added. Zhou Xinghong understood, but he was still utterly surprised by her complete change. "Oh, these are the keys to your apartment." Zhou Xinghong drew out a string of keys, handing it to Gu Ning. He then told Gu Ning the location of the apartment. They went to the antique market after the meal. At the same time, Lin Lijuan called Gu Man after her lunch, but Gu Man wouldn't answer. Although Lin Lijuan knew that would be the result, she was still irritated. She drove straight to the factory that Gu Man had worked for. However, when she arrived at the factory, she was surprised by the fact that Gu Man had already quit her job. Gu Man had quit her job? Where was she now? It was hard for Gu Man, who was a middle-aged woman without an academic degree, to find a new job. Lin Lijuan immediately called Gu Qingxiang and told him that Gu Man had quit. Gu Qingxiang was also astonished. After a while, he told Lin Lijuan to wait at the old house this afternoon. Gu Qingxiang didn't know that Gu Man and her daughter had already been kicked out of the old house. Lin Lijuan was struck dumb for a second. Then she told Gu Qingxiang what had happened. Hearing that, Gu Qingxiang was mad. He was furious that Gu Man and her daughter dared to stand up against his family. "Call Gu Qing and ask her where Gu Man is," Gu Qingxiang said. Then, Lin Lijuan called Gu Qing. At the beginning, Gu Qing answered her phone, but wasn't willing to tell Lin Lijuan anything about Gu Man, so Lin Lijuan called her many times. Gu Qing started to feel annoyed, and she refused to answer Lin Lijuan's phone calls again. Lin Lijuan was aggravated for a long time. She tried to call Jiangsu, but Jiangsu did the same thing. He didn't tell Lin Lijuan anything at first, then ignored her calls directly. Jiangsu was truly busy after all. During these days, Jiangsu was occupied in decorating the store, cooperating with the construction material factories, hiring staff and maintaining a good relationship with the Industry and Commerce Bureau. Jiangsu knew the rules well. He knew he needed to deal with them with money, but he didn't go too far with it. Jiangsu was an upright man, but he also knew what a businessman had to do in this society today. As long as he didn't hurt others and do harmful things for money, he was willing to obey the unspoken rules. Lin Lijuan was almost in a rage because of Gu Qing's and Jiangsu's attitude. She disliked to be ignored. Lin Lijuan called Gu Qingxiang once more. Gu Qingxiang was also irritated, so he told her to go to Gu Qing's workplace. Lin Lijuan went to Gu Qing's and Jiangsu's workplaces afterwards, but she only found out that they had both quit already. Lin Lijuan was completely struck dumb. What had happened? Why had they all quit? At that time, an idea dawned on Lin Lijuan that Gu Qing's family could have moved too. Thinking of that, Lin Lijuan went to prove it. It then turned out to be true. Gu Qing's family had also moved. What had happened? Lin Lijuan told Gu Qingxiang later. Gu Qingxiang was beyond mad now. He called Gu Man, Gu Qing and Jiangsu himself, but no one would answer his call. Did they really plan to end their relationship with the Gu family? How could they possibly do that? Gu Qingxiang called Gu Qingyang and told him everything. He asked Gu Qingyang to call Gu Man and ask her what was going on. Gu Qingyang was also very surprised. He believed that it must be Gu Man's fault. He called Gu Man at once. Gu Man answered Gu Qingyang's call. Although she knew that Gu Qingxiang had to be behind it, she didn't want to irritate Gu Qingyang for now. Gu Man, what's wrong with you? Why have you, Gu Qing and Jiangsu all moved? Why do you refuse to answer our eldest brother's call? Where do you live now? Once the phone was answered, Gu Qingyang roared in anger. Even Gu Qing, who sat aside, heard him clearly. Gu Man felt aggrieved and like crying. Gu Qing grabbed Gu Man's phone away. She roared back angrily, "Mind your attitude. Why should we tell you anything? It's none of your business. Leave us alone." All you've done is blame us. What have we actually done wrong? From now on, you better be friendly to us. Otherwise, we're no longer brothers and sisters. Then, Gu Qing hung up on Gu Qingyang. Gu Qingyang was so mad that he almost smashed his phone on the ground. He couldn't accept the fact that Gu Qing ignored him. Gu Qingyang had always felt he was superior to Gu Qing. He never realized that he was the one that was wrong. Although they were brothers and sisters, they didn't have the right to get involved in Gu Man's and Gu Qing's personal affairs. However, they thought that they were richer than their sisters, so they believed that they naturally had the right to control their sisters. Gu Qingyang called Gu Qing again, but she wouldn't answer. Gu Ning opened her jade eyes while walking along the antique street. Many of the objects were the same ones of the last week. There were a few new objects, but most of them were fake. Even though they were almost all fake, there were real antiques. Besides, Gu Ning had been very lucky ever since she had been reborn. After a while, Gu Ning found an antique with power halfway down the street. It was a crumpled, dirty teapot. It was big and looked ordinary and unattractive. If Gu Ning hadn't noticed the power above it and known that it was real, she would have missed it too. She stared at it and gradually fell in love with it. The color of the pot was dark and thick. Its material was like jade. The shape was simple and delicate with mysterious charm. Gu Ning didn't know much about antiques, so she couldn't determine the source or the price of this teapot. However, judging from its intense power, Gu Ning believed that the teapot must have a long history. Its price wouldn't be low. "Hey, how much is this?" Gu Ning asked. The stand owner took a glance at the teapot with obvious dislike in his eyes. The teapot was dusty and dirty. Its size was big, and it was ugly. He didn't throw it away yet only because he didn't want to lose money. The stand owner then glanced at Gu Ning's face. The price would depend on how interested Gu Ning was in this teapot. If she was very interested in it, the price would be higher, and vice versa. Gu Ning knew the rules, so she didn't show her happiness on face, but instead looked hesitant. Accordingly, the stand owner couldn't raise the price. 500 yuan, he said. After that, he was a little regretful. He only bought this object at the price of 50 yuan. Great! Gu Ning immediately took out 500 yuan and gave it to the stand owner. The stand owner was surprised that she would buy it so quickly without bargaining at all. However, he believed that it must be a fake, so he happily took the money from Gu Ning. Gu Ning continued to walk around. She found another object with power before long. It was a landscape painting called The Pond and the People. In the painting, a few strokes revealed the leisurely lifestyle of the people living in the south. There was no specific character, but it could make others feel the beauty of life. The several willow trees on the painting weren't painted by ink, but in the creative way of the most typical combination of Chinese and Western styles. The paint was squeezed directly from the tubes while the artist was painting. The artist's name was Wu Guanzhong. Gu Ning knew that Wu Guanzhong was a famous modern artist, oil painting artist and art educator. He had passed away several years ago. In her last lifetime, her father Tang Zhenhua owned a painting called The Snow of Peking. It had cost him 4 million yuan at auction. Therefore, this The Pond and the People landscape painting would be worth several million too. It would be more expensive than The Snow of Peking. Diascover dated novels on NOV/E/Lbin.co. Gu Ning bought the painting at the price of 1,000 yuan. Everyone believed that it was fake, because it was sold at a stand. If the stand owner had known that it was authentic, he would have sold it to an art lover himself and made a fortune from it. When Gu Ning almost reached the end of the antique street, she found a pink glass with deer heads as decoration. She still didn't know the source and the price of this pink glass, but she bought it since it had power. Gu Ning thought to herself that she must read more books about antiques. Even though she could recognize the real antiques now, she had no idea about its price. She didn't want to be deceived when she was going to sell it in the future. She paid 1,200 yuan for this pink glass. Zhou Xinghong stood aside with mixed emotions. He didn't know whether those objects Gu Ning had bought were real or not. It only cost several thousand yuan after all, which was nothing for Gu Ning. However, he believed that Gu Ning wouldn't waste her money on it if it was fake. She must have bought them because she thought they were real. If those antiques were real, it was so unbearable. How could Gu Ning accurately pick out the real antiques? Zhou Xinghong was curious and surprised, but he didn't say a word. He knew that curiosity killed the cat. He only needed to know that Gu Ning had helped him a lot. And he would stay loyal to her. The two went to the street of stone gambling later and started shopping from the first shop as usual. There were almost all new raw materials indeed. The number of raw materials with jade inside inclined too. In the first shop, Gu Ning had already found 2 raw materials with high-level jade and 4 raw materials with medium-high-level jade. Their sizes varied from an apple to a football. There were other raw materials with low-level jade inside. However, Gu Ning didn't buy them not because she disliked the jade, but because she wanted to save some for other customers. She didn't plan to cut the raw materials out here, so she didn't buy any waste raw materials to disguise her behavior. Gu Ning bought 7 raw materials in the end. She went into other shops later and bought 4 to 6 raw materials with high-level jade in each shop. Now she had 28 raw materials in hands. Although they were mostly small, they were worth a fortune. They weighed 336 pounds and were worth about 1 billion yuan at least. They were too heavy to push around in a cart. However, since Zhou Xinghong was here, it wasn't convenient for Gu Ning to put them all in the telepathic eye space. Although the customer could store the raw materials in the shop, Gu Ning didn't want to do that, because she clearly knew that all her raw materials had jade inside. She could only leave them in the car and let Zhou Xinghong watch them. And she would continue to buy some in the street of stone gambling. This time, she was going to cut out jade and sell some to collect money. Gu Ning firstly went to those shops that she had never been to before to buy several raw materials with medium high-level jade and high-level jade. She put them into the telepathic eye space secretly. Then she went to the largest raw materials shop where she had met Zhou Xinghong. The shop was indeed the largest one with the most raw materials. Many of them had jade inside too. Gu Ning walked around the shop and bought 15 raw materials. All of them had high-level jade or medium high-level jade. 5 of them weighed around 20 pounds, while one weighed around 50 pounds, and the rest all weighed 4 to 8 pounds. Gu Ning went on a shopping spree. All of the customers in the shop paid attention to her suddenly, because they had never seen anyone else who bought so many raw materials at a time. 4 or 5 raw materials would be more than enough. Nevertheless, it was universally acknowledged that it was very hard to cut out jade from raw materials, so everyone believed that Gu Ning was simply wasting her money. Her raw materials weighed 280 pounds in total and were worth about 8 million yuan. "Miss, do you want to cut out them?" the shop owner asked. Although he himself didn't think that there was jade in this pile of raw materials that belonged to Gu Ning, he was curious. "Yes, please," Gu Ning replied. The shop owner immediately guided Gu Ning to the area where the raw materials were cut out. Once there was someone going to cut out his or her raw materials, many onlookers would gather around. "Please let 2 workers cut those raw materials out together." There were 2 machines, and no one else was using it. Gu Ning wanted to finish it soon, so she let 2 workers cut out her raw materials together. In addition, Gu Ning had changed her clothes. No one would recognize who she was. Therefore, she gave up the idea of using waste raw materials to cover her behavior. Gu Ning chose 2 raw materials with medium high-level jade inside first. One weighed 50 pounds, and the other one was as big as a basketball. Gu Ning drew lines on them herself. The machine started to work. Before long, the first raw material was cut out, and the green showed along with a round of surprised voices. "Wow, the green! It's impossible! Just one cut, which is only 2 centimeters deep. Can it be just a thin layer? If it isn't a thin layer, it must be huge. Yes, the jade was as large as a basketball, and the outer layer was as thin as 2 centimeters. The shop owner immediately ran over with an unpleasant face. He knew that such good news would attract more customers, but he still preferred to cut this huge jade out by himself. However, he didn't dare to try himself. It was highly risky to cut raw materials out randomly. The worker continued his work, and the green jade gradually showed its type. Hibiscus type. Hibiscus type. It's a medium high-level jade. Everyone knew that the raw material belonged to Gu Ning. They all looked at Gu Ning with envy, but Gu Ning stayed calm. There was always someone bidding immediately after the window was cut, because the raw material was very likely to be valuable once the green showed. Many people wanted to use less money to exchange a potentially precious jade. Of course, the owner of the raw material normally wouldn't sell it right away. Only a coward or an idiot would sell it at the beginning. Everyone knew that once the green showed, the raw material was highly likely to be priceless. So most people chose to gamble continuously. Even if it was only a thin layer of green jade, the owner would accept it. Please don't rush to bid. I won't sell it until the jade is fully cut out. Please be patient, Gu Ning comforted the crowd while they were busy bidding. The owner had said it openly, so they stopped bidding. Gu Ning had the right to sell it or not after all. Then, Gu Ning let the worker continue to cut out the raw material. One cut after another, a larger scale of the jade showed gradually. The outer layer was indeed only as thin as 2 centimeters. The jade had to be valuable. Now everyone was even more envious of Gu Ning. Within a few minutes, the green showed from the other raw material. The crowd was greatly surprised again. This woman was so unbelievably lucky. Someone even remembered the young girl who had been so lucky last week too. However, no one believed this woman before their eyes, and the young girl were the same person. One was an 18-year-old teenager, and the other was a mature woman. They were so different. CHCK for US to rise on no/v/l/bin.c0m. The outer layer of the second raw material was only 5 centimeters thick. Additionally, the second raw material was 2 times bigger than the first one. It had to be valuable too. It's transparent like the water with shiny smooth texture. It's jade of the water type. Water type is medium high-level jade. Jesus! This woman is so lucky. She cut out 2 medium high-level jade at a time. And they both are so big. They must be worth at least 100 million yuan. Everyone took a long breath in. At least 100 million yuan. Although people who loved stone gambling were all rich, not many of them could afford to buy the jade at the price of 100 million yuan. Right now, everyone was beyond jealous of Gu Ning, especially the shop owner. Half an hour later, the jade of the hibiscus type was fully cut out. It was as big as 3/4 of a basketball. This jade of the hibiscus type was 5 times larger than the one Zhou Xinghong had cut out last time. Its price was naturally 5 times higher. It was worth around 80 million yuan. The most generous buyer would get the jade. In order to lower the price, everyone started to bid from a low price, but since the jade was so big, its lowest price was 20 million yuan. 25 million yuan. 26 million yuan. 30 million yuan. While everyone was busy bidding, Gu Ning absorbed the power into the telepathic eye space. 70 million yuan. Everyone stopped bidding once the price rose to 70 million yuan. There weren't many jewelry businessmen here right now after all. Although 70 million yuan was 10 million lower than Gu Ning's expected price, she still made a fortune. The shop owner was reluctant to accept the fact, but he still spread the good news immediately to attract customers. However, he couldn't afford much more good news like that. His heart would be broken. The shop owner had been working in this industry for over 10 years. He had seen people cut out valuable jade, but it only happened a few times a year. The jade was mostly around the price of a few million yuan. Nevertheless, things changed so quickly this month. A young girl had cut out several priceless jade last week, and now a woman cut out more highly valuable jade. The shop owner felt so unhappy. Many people swarmed in this shop after the news was abroad, especially the jewelry businessmen. They all wanted to buy the jade. The shop was actually big, but it soon became very crowded. The first one was sold already, while the second one was still being cut out. Seeing that it was a large medium high-level jade of the water type, the jewelry businessmen were all excited. Although a medium high-level jade wasn't rare, it was still hard to find one. No one wanted to miss it. Someone immediately bid, but was stopped by Gu Ning. She told them what she had just said. There were rules in every industry, and they had to obey them. Gu Ning then chose the third raw material with a high-level jade inside. It was as big as 2 apples. She handed it to the first worker. The third raw material wasn't big, so the worker decided to rub it. Since Gu Ning had already cut out 2 highly valuable jade, the worker was very careful, but it was still hard for him to believe that this woman could be so lucky. The crowd had mixed emotions. Some expected it to be valuable, and some had the opposite hope. More and more people came into this shop. The shop was now full of people in every corner, but most of them focused on the worker who was rubbing the raw material, and not many of them were shopping. Before the second jade was fully cut out, the green showed from the third raw material. Everyone took a long breath in again. They all looked at Gu Ning with one accord. The shock on their faces was beyond description. 3 raw materials with 3 pieces of jade. Some assumed that this woman must be from a family running the jade business, so she had some extraordinary ability. Some also assumed the rest of the raw materials in her cart had jade inside too. The third jade was fully cut out gradually. It was a high-level violet jade of the glass type. What? It was so unbelievable. Some people almost had a heart attack right then. The shop owner wasn't willing to face the truth, and he felt dizzy. However, those jewelry businessmen were the happiest ones. A high-level violet jade was very rare. This violet jade was slightly bigger than the one Gu Ning sold to Qin Yifan, so its price was a little higher. She is so unbelievably lucky. She must be from a family that has been running a jade business for generations. Exactly, I can't agree more. In my opinion, she must have jade eyes. She can see the jade inside. The man was joking, but hit the point accidentally. Gu Ning was nervous for a while, then she relaxed. No one would believe that even though it was the truth. It was already beyond the knowledge of human beings. What? I heard someone cut out an emerald of the hibiscus type. Is there a violet jade that has been cut out too? At that moment, a surprised male voice sounded from the door. The man apparently had heard the good news. Oh, Master Bai, Master Yan and Chairman Bai, so nice to meet you. The shop owner immediately welcomed the guests with respect. A lady has just cut out an emerald of the hibiscus type. Another jade of the water type hasn't been fully cut out yet, and a violet jade is out already. What? Hearing that, those guests were obviously shocked. Gu Ning unconsciously looked over once she heard that Master Yan was here. The old man was indeed Master Yan. There was an old man around 70 and a man around 45 with Master Yan. They must be Master Bai and Chairman Bai. The two resembled each other a lot, and must be father and son. Gu Ning had completely changed her look, so she didn't greet Master Yan, but pretended that she didn't know him at all. Please don't tell me the owner is the same person, Master Bai said. It is, the shop owner answered, although he felt so hurt in his heart. Hearing that, 3 of them all had a long breath in. It was so unbelievable. Let's go and see who is so lucky and cut out 3 emeralds at a time, Master Bai said. He walked over at once, followed by Master Yan and Chairman Bai. Master Yan couldn't help thinking to himself that Gu Ning had been so fortunate last time, but now another person had done the same thing. It was so strange. They went into the crowd. Master Bai asked, "Who is the owner of those raw materials, please?" "It's me," Gu Ning answered. She didn't want Master Yan to recognize her, so she deliberately changed her voice slightly. It was a young woman. Master Bai and his company were astonished again. Master Bai knew that an 18-year-old girl had cut out several high-level jade last week, but he didn't know that this woman who seemed at least 24 years old was the same person as the young girl. He was surprised. Why could the young ladies cut jade out so easily nowadays? Master Yan had the same thought in his mind, but he felt familiar with this woman before his eyes. Had he met her somewhere else? However, he wasn't able to connect her with Gu Ning, because they looked so different. Facing Master Bai, Gu Ning stayed calm as usual. She wasn't arrogant at all just because she had cut out several valuable jade. Master Bai immediately had a good impression of her. He complimented her plainly, "What a promising young woman." Meanwhile, the large jade of the water type was fully cut out. Gu Ning now allowed the crowd to bid, and she immediately absorbed its power. Although compared with this medium high-level jade of the water type, the high-level violet jade was more attractive. The buyers didn't want to miss either of them. 10 million yuan. 20 million yuan. 30 million yuan. 100 million yuan. 150 million yuan. In the end, this jade of the water type was sold at the price of 150 million yuan. It was as big as a basketball. 150 million yuan was an acceptable price. If the buyer used it to make jewelry and sold them all, he could make around 30 million yuan in profit. Businessmen wouldn't waste their time and money in unprofitable business. Gu Ning then chose her fourth raw material with a medium high-level jade, which was as big as a basketball, inside. Before the violet jade was fully rubbed out, the green showed from the fourth raw material. Someone was so shocked that he couldn't help but say dirty words. What the F***ck? Is this woman a real human being? It was quite understandable that he said that. No one else had ever cut out 4 emeralds before. This woman couldn't be a human being. Everyone now looked at Gu Ning like she was an alien, Master Bai and his company included. Although Master Yan knew that Gu Ning had cut out 4 medium high-level and high-level jade last week too, there had been some waste raw materials. However, this woman didn't cut out a single piece of raw material. She was even more extraordinary than Gu Ning. Gu Ning, instead, didn't care about the onlookers' attitude. Master Bai approached near and took a closer look at the jade. He said, "The green color is bright, and the color shape is strip-shaped. The filaments are arranged in a straight line, and the filaments are in the form of a shallow bottom. This is the silk type. The green strips are clearly distributed in a certain direction, and the jadeite crystals are elongated and oriented in a fine fiber shape, so this is the medium high-level silk type." Master Bai was apparently an expert. Explore Tati stories at no/l//bin.cm. Before long, the violet jade was fully cut out. 50 million yuan. Master Bai opened his mouth first. He wanted the violet jade. Although 50 million yuan wasn't the perfect price for this jade, it was high enough to show his fondness towards it. Not everyone was willing to spend that much money on an emerald. Some people retreated in front of the beginning bid of 50 million yuan, but some still tried to compete. I think Master Bai must like this violet jade very much, but I love it too. I bid 55 million yuan for it, a middle-aged man said with obvious respect. Everyone could bid for the jade fairly, but Master Bai was a respectable and powerful man. Therefore, everyone needed to show his or her respect in front of him. Since you love it too, then let's compete. 60 million yuan. Master Bai said. He liked this violet jade, but he was willing to compete too. The most generous buyer could get the jade. Hearing the talk between Master Bai and the man, Gu Ning thought of Master Fu and Zhao Yifeng. They had the same competition last week, but Master Fu had won in the end. This time, Gu Ning believed Master Bai was more likely to win. 60 million yuan. 65 million yuan. 70 million yuan. 75 million yuan. 80 million yuan. When Master Bai bid 80 million yuan for the jade, the man hesitated. The price was almost there. If the jade was used to make jewelry, it could bring at least 20 million yuan in profit. And if the price went higher, the deal wouldn't be profitable. Finally, the man gave up. Master Bai paid 80 million yuan for the violet jade, and he was thrilled. Master Fu showed off in front of my face last week. He got an emerald of the glutinous rice type and an emerald of the glass type. I was so jealous of him. Now I have this violet jade, which is much more expensive than his. I'm going to show off in front of his face, and let him be jealous of me. Master Bai gloated like a child. Like the old saying went, the elderly were like the children. Hearing that, Gu Ning felt like laughing, but she restricted herself. At the same time, she couldn't help thinking to herself that Master Fu would probably be really jealous. If Master Fu knew that this violet jade Master Bai bought was from her, he would probably also blame her for that. Thinking of that, Gu Ning felt a little helpless. The jade of the silk type, which was as big as half a basketball, was bought by the middle-aged man at the price of 50 million yuan. Though it was a pity he didn't get the violet jade, it was a great comfort to get the jade of the silk type. Gu Ning made 345 million yuan in total and absorbed a lot of power. Jesus! She made 345 million yuan at once. I think those raw materials cost a few million yuan at the most. Exactly. I'm envious of her. Why couldn't I be so lucky? I wish I were her. Is there more jade in the raw materials in her cart? Who knows? Gu Ning had already cut out 4 raw materials with highly valuable jade. No one knew whether there was more jade in those raw materials in her cart. Everyone was now jealous of her. Gu Ning also received many unkind looks. She knew that some would pay more attention to her since she had made a fortune, but she wasn't scared. Gu Ning thought that 345 million yuan was enough to satisfy her needs, and it was time to stop. She sensed that she was causing trouble for herself. If she continued, she would be in bigger trouble. She was not afraid of trouble, but she didn't like it. Accordingly, Gu Ning packed up the rest raw materials and got ready to leave. Some businessmen who were waiting for Gu Ning to cut out more jade felt disappointed, but they couldn't force her to do it. Although 100 pounds of raw materials weren't heavy for Gu Ning, she was wearing high heels now and it wasn't convenient. Therefore, she bought a cart in the shop and used it to push the raw materials away. Before she left, many jewelry businessmen gave her their name cards. They all wanted to cooperate with her. If she could cut out more jade in the future, they all wanted to receive her call. Gu Ning happily took the name cards, but since she didn't have her own name card, she didn't exchange name cards with them. She didn't even tell them her name and number, because she didn't want them to know her real identity. After Gu Ning left the shop for a short while, she felt that someone was stalking her. She stayed calm. There were a lot of people around here. The stalker didn't have chance to hurt her. Even if the stalker planned to hurt her, Gu Ning was confident that she could win. Only because it wasn't convenient for her to fight today, she wanted to avoid conflict. On her way, she called Zhou Xinghong to pick her up beside the road. She also told him to wait for her in the car and to not show his face. Gu Ning walked down to the entrance of the antique street safely. There were too many people in this street after all. However, once she left the antique street, there was a wide road ahead. Zhou Xinghong was waiting for her in the car beside the road. Gu Ning went straight in the car and left the stalkers behind. Gu Ning sat in her car. In the rearview mirror, she noticed that several men were madly looking at the direction she left. They got in a black car, chasing after her quickly. Gu Ning frowned a little. Those men wouldn't leave her alone. "Uncle Zhou, how's your driving skill?" Gu Ning asked. Zhou Xinghong didn't know her real intention, so he simply answered, "I've driven for 12 years. Not bad, I think. We're being stalked. Please drive faster and get rid of them, safely of course," Gu Ning said. What? Zhou Xinghong was surprised and felt nervous. He tried his best to calm down, then drove faster and focused on the road. There were 3 men who were around 30 in the car behind Gu Ning. Seeing Gu Ning's car speed up suddenly, they thought that they must have been discovered. "Boss, did they discover us?" the man sat on the driver's seat asked. "Probably," a man who sat in the back answered in a deep and unpleasant voice. "Shall we continue chasing them?" a man who sat in the passenger seat asked. "Of course, why not? We can't let her leave with that much money," the man said firmly with greed in his eyes. Therefore, they continued to follow Gu Ning's car. The driver was obviously skillful and followed tightly behind them. It seemed very difficult for Zhou Xinghong to get rid of him. Gu Ning frowned with displeasure. When they left the densely populated area and they were in a relatively remote part of the road, Gu Ning told Zhou Xinghong to stop the car. "I think we probably can't get rid of them. Please park the car alongside the road. We can't allow them to follow us all the way. We need to deal with it now." "Boss," Zhou Xinghong was a little worried. Although he knew that Gu Ning was powerful and strong, he had no idea about the ability of those men. What if they were more powerful than Gu Ning? "Relax, it'll be fine." Gu Ning understood that Zhou Xinghong cared about her, so she didn't blame him for doubting her decision. Zhou Xinghong also knew that no one could change Gu Ning's decision once she had made up her mind, so he could only obey her order. Zhou Xinghong stopped the car. Those who had been chasing them felt puzzled. However, no matter what had happened, that was an opportunity for them. They immediately parked their car in front of Gu Ning's in case they tried to run away. Uncle Joe, you can stay in the car, Gu Ning ordered with determination. She got out of the car. She had already changed her high heels into a pair of sneakers for convenience. Zhou Xinghong was concerned about Gu Ning, but didn't dare to disobey her order. Besides, he knew that he would only be a burden if he went out. He could only pray that Gu Ning would be safe. The minute that Gu Ning left the car, 3 tall and bulky men walked towards her. Gu Ning immediately used her jade eyes to see whether they carried guns. Luckily, they didn't have guns. Gu Ning was now completely confident that she would win. Those men didn't expect that a woman would get out of the car, walking towards them and seem so calm. They were greatly surprised, but still, they believed it would be super easy for them to deal with a single woman and the man who was hiding in the car. They thought that he must be too scared to come out. Give us all your money and raw materials. Otherwise, you'll learn your lesson, a man threatened. Even though they weren't sure whether there was more jade in the rest of the raw materials, they had witnessed Gu Ning had cut out one jade after another. They believed that it was highly possible that the rest of the raw materials had jade inside too. They of course wouldn't miss it. Oh, how? Gu Ning pulled her corner of lips, raising her eyebrow with disdain. She didn't take them seriously at all. Those men were irritated by Gu Ning's attitude. A man raised his voice, "Are you going to give it to us or not? If you want it, come on and get it yourself, but let me warn you first. If you don't want to die, go away right now," Gu Ning said. "Whoa, then let's see what you have." Saying that, the 3 men strode to Gu Ning. However, before they could go any further, they suddenly stopped and even stepped backwards quickly. They looked at Gu Ning with fear on their faces. Gu Ning didn't want to waste her time and energy on fighting, so she directly pulled out a gun. She aimed at them when they were approaching. Those men were frightened, but they still doubted whether the gun was real. Zhou Xinghong was terrified too. He also couldn't believe that the gun was real. It wasn't easy to get a real one. Don't try to terrify us with a fake gun," a man said, but he didn't dare to step forward. "Try it, if you want to know whether it's real or not," Gu Ning said with a threatening face. The gun was loaded. The 3 men stepped further backwards in horror. LL news to rise at N0V/LBI/.cm. The gun was real? What should we do now? A man asked nervously. If the gun was real, they could end up dead. What else can we do? Although we want money, we don't want to die for it. Go back now, another man said resignedly. They wanted the money, but weren't willing to die for it. Accordingly, they went back to their car and escaped right away. When they were gone, Gu Ning went back to her car. Zhou Xinghong asked, "Boss, is your gun real or fake?" "It's real. I got it last week. I secretly took 2 with me, but 1 was handed over. And I have to give this one to the military officer tomorrow too." Gu Ning didn't hide, but she felt slightly reluctant to give the gun back. Hearing that, Zhou Xinghong was surprised. Gu Ning was very honest and bold. She even dared to steal the gun. If anyone else had done the same thing, Zhou Xinghong would feel unpleasant, but he didn't feel unpleasant towards Gu Ning at all. It was already 4 p.m. now. When Gu Ning had just left the street of stone gambling, Master Bai called Master Fu and told him everything. Master Fu was so jealous and mad at the same time. He regretted that he refused to go out with Master Bai today, but stayed at home playing with his grandson. He had missed so much as well as the jade. Hearing that the woman had cut out 4 jade continuously, Master Fu's first reaction was that the woman must be Gu Ning. He then asked directly. Master Bai denied it. Although he didn't know Gu Ning, Master Yan knew her. If the woman had been Gu Ning, Master Yan would have told him. In adding, the woman was much older than Gu Ning. Master Fu then had the same feeling as Master Bai and Master Yan. What was going on now? Why could those young ladies easily cut out jade? Such a strange thing had never happened before. Before long, a post went viral on the internet. Its title was "Shocking News, a young woman cut out 4 jade continuously in the street of stone gambling in City G, which are worth 345 million yuan. There was a photo attached to the post. It was Gu Ning, but the photo only showed one side of her body, so it was hard to recognize her face. Many people saw the news, including Qin Yifan, Li Zhenzhen and her brother, Gu Ning's friends and relatives, but no one knew that it was Gu Ning. Within an hour, the post became the #1 topic and had been viewed by 100,000 people with a few thousand comments. Although Gu Ning had caused a sensation in the street of stone gambling last week, no one had posted about it on the internet. Her story had only circulated within the stone gambling circle. Otherwise, Gu Ning's identity would have been exposed in public. All the internet users who had left comments felt so jealous. They all wished they could have the same luck. 345 million yuan was a lot. With that much money, one didn't need to work for the rest of his or her lifetime. Meanwhile, everyone began to guess who the woman was. Some said the woman must come from a family that had been running a jewelry business for generations, or she must be an expert. Some believed she had just been lucky, while others assumed she must have jade eyes. Although jade eyes was the real reason, no one would believe it. It was beyond their knowledge after all. In the end, everyone called the woman the Queen of Jade. Many jewelry businessmen were searching for this Queen of Jade. They wanted to cooperate with her, but they could find nothing. Both Gu Ning and Zhou Xinghong had no idea what was going on the internet. Even if they knew, they wouldn't care, because no one could recognize that the woman was Gu Ning. At the same time, they arrived at the processing plant. This was a factory area. There were many factories, and the gates were all guarded by security guards. Factory staff could get in with a pass, while an outsider needed to register and leave their ID card at the security office. There were cameras everywhere around the factory, so it was safe. Zhou Xinghong had already gotten his pass while he had rented this processing plant, but he only had the passes for him, the designers and the carvers. One needed to show his or her ID card and a 1-inch standard photo to get a pass. Accordingly, Gu Ning used her ID card to register this time, but she also filled in the documents to get a pass. Gu Ning was going to register a company, so she had already prepared the required documents including 1-inch standard photos. She could get her pass tomorrow. The designer and carvers had received Zhou Xinghong's information earlier, so they had already arrived at the processing plant before Gu Ning. Zhou Xinghong didn't hide the truth that Gu Ning was the real boss before them, but he only told them the fact. In the beginning, they were a little puzzled and disappointed when they found out that their real boss was an 18-year-old girl. However, Zhou Xinghong also told them that although their real boss was young, she was super clever with outstanding abilities at stone gambling. She could fight too. What had happened in the restaurant had become a hot piece of news. Everybody knew it, although many details were unknown. Zhou Xinghong then told them what they had been through. When they heard that Gu Ning had grabbed 2 criminals' guns and beaten them down, they were all shocked. Now they respected Gu Ning without any doubt. They had been working for Zhou Xinghong for over 10 years. They knew Zhou Xinghong well, so they trusted what Zhou Xinghong said. Afterwards, Zhou Xinghong warned them the same way Gu Ning had warned him. They were the first group of people who got in touch with the jade after all. They needed to be loyal to their work and the company. Although Zhou Xinghong believed in them, he still needed to remind them. After hearing about Gu Ning's extraordinary ability, no one dared to mess with her. In addition, they were upright men, which helped them earn trust from Zhou Xinghong. LL News Tirais at N0V/LBI/.cm. When Gu Ning and Zhou Xinghong walked in, 3 designers and carvers were having a rest in the room. They heard the sound of someone opening the door, so they immediately stood up and went out. However, when they saw Gu Ning, they were all surprised. Wasn't their boss a 18-year-old girl? This woman must be in her mid-20s. This woman wasn't their boss? They looked to Zhou Xinghong for an answer. Zhou Xinghong opened his mouth. This is our boss, Gu Ning. They greeted Gu Ning at once, although they felt puzzled. Nice to meet you, boss. Then, Zhou Xinghong introduced them to Gu Ning. This is the designer, Wang Zhiyong. These 2 are carvers, Chang Qingshan and Zhou Rong. They were at the same age as Zhou Xinghong. Nice to meet you all. From now on, we're a team. As long as you're loyal to me, I promise that you'll have a bright future ahead, Gu Ning said kindly. She didn't put on airs at all. Everyone admired her. They also believed Gu Ning's promise. She had already given them a much higher salary. Gu Ning was even more generous than Zhou Xinghong. They were all sure that they couldn't find another job with a higher salary than this one. Although they were skillful jewelry workers, they stayed low profile. And only the top jewelry artists could demand the top salary. Additionally, they also got a great bonus according to sales. No one would be lazy under this condition. Sure, boss, they answered with excitement. Great, please move the raw materials in the car to the insurance room now. I need to change first, Gu-ning said. She then headed to the ladies' room. Although she didn't know that she was popular on the internet now, she felt that it was better to be the original her. The designers and carvers immediately followed Zhou Xinghong to move the raw materials. The processing plant was 160 square meters big. There was an area for machines, a restroom, a kitchen, a 20 square meters meeting room and a 10 square meters insurance room. In the insurance room, there was a large safe to protect the jade from thieves and fire. As for the outsiders, the jade was secure in the safe, but for the insiders, it depended on who was guarding the safe. It was impossible for Gu-ning to completely trust her employees, but she couldn't run the business on her own. She needed people to help her. Nothing good came without risk. When they found that there was a large pile of raw materials in the car, they were all astonished. Chairman Zhou, our boss is so generous. Is there jade in every one of them? Chang Qingshan asked. If most of them had jade inside, they would be worth a fortune. I don't know, we'll have to wait until they are cut, Zhou Xinghong replied. Although he trusted Gu-ning, he didn't want to brag in front of Chang Qingshan and the others. They soon moved all the raw materials, and Gu-ning had changed her clothes before coming out. She was wearing a casual suit and had removed her makeup. She made her hair into a bun and looked more like a student now. She looked totally different. Except for Zhou Xinghong, the others were all astonished. If they hadn't known that there was only Gu-ning who was a female, they would have mistaken her for an outsider. Gu-ning didn't interfere in their work. She only told them to work harder and made more jewelry before opening the company. She set the opening time on Saturday in 2 weeks. They still had 2 weeks, but it took a lot of time to make jewelry out of jade, so they needed to work harder. Now, they were ready to cut out the raw materials. Because there was only one machine, one was cutting out raw materials, while the others were rubbing raw materials. They had been working in this industry for over 10 years. Although they hadn't cut out valuable jade before, they were very familiar with stone gambling. Gu-ning drew the lines herself. She had jade eyes, and could avoid wasting jade. When Gu-ning was drawing lines in the insurance room, she secretly exchanged raw materials with the strongest power with those raw materials in the telepathic eye space. It was highly possible that there was top-level jade in those raw materials with the strongest power. Gu-ning didn't want to let too many top-level jade become exposed in public. There was already one outside. She planned to cut out the 2 fist-sized raw material with the strongest power herself. Outside, Chang Qingshan cut off a thin layer of outer skin, and the green showed. His hands trembled with excitement. Oh, my! The green is showing after only one cut. Boss has drawn the line so accurately. No, it's because of Boss's extraordinary ability. The first one is showing green already. Chang Qingshan said with thrill. Even though Zhou Xinghong had seen Gu-ning cut out jade randomly, he was still surprised to see the jade again. The workers had also heard about it from Zhou Xinghong, but it was still shocking when they cut the jade out themselves. They used water to clean off the dust and the jade showed its real appearance. It was a medium-high-level jade of the ice type. Many of them took a long breath in. They had worked for Zhoufu Jewelry for many years, but they had seldom seen medium-high-level jade. Most of the jade they had seen was low-level or medium-level. Besides, they hadn't seen many medium-level emeralds either. Zhoufu Jewelry was a medium-low-level brand. It couldn't afford medium-high-level or high-level jade. After the shock, they continued to cut the raw materials. After a while, Zhou Xinghong and others also saw green show continuously. 2 were medium-high-level jade of the hibiscus type and pink lotus root type, and 1 was a high-level jade of the glass type. The 3 of them were all shocked. They even trembled and felt that it was like a dream. When Gu-ning came out, everyone looked to her with admiration. Boss, you must be a goddess, right? Zhang Rong said. He was joking, of course. I don't think so. Even the gods or goddesses can't cut out jade every time, but our boss can. I think our boss must have a special ability. Wang Xiong said. He was joking too. Gu-ning knew that they were joking, but she had to stop them from guessing. She said and warned, all right, stop now. Don't tell others about what is happening here. I don't want others to know about it, please. Sure, boss. Please don't worry, we won't tell anyone else, they all promised. Then Gu Ning sat down to rub the raw material with the strongest power. Gu Ning was right, there was a top-level jade in this raw material. It was a classic dark green with light blue. This was the king's green. Gu Ning heavily took a long breath in. She opened her mouth. The king's green. Everyone was shocked when Gu Ning said that. What? The king's green? At that time, even Zhou Xinghong couldn't remain calm. He immediately put down the raw material, running to Gu Ning. Other than Chang Qingshan, who was in the middle of cutting, both Wang Zhiyong and Zhang Rong ran to Gu Ning. They almost fell on their way. No one could blame them for being so excited. The king's green was the king of jade. It was very rare to see. When they saw that it was a real king's green in Gu Ning's hands, every one of them held his breath. It was the king's green. The king's green. Before we open our company, we can use this king's green to promote our brand. I believe that many customers will be interested, Gu Ning said. Everyone agreed. Once the news about the king's green was out, even those jewelry businessmen in City G would come without invitation. No matter how big their companies were, they probably didn't have the king's green themselves. Visit novilbin.c/m for the L-Test updates. Although the Jade Beauty was aimed to be a high-end jewelry brand, it began from a small store. They weren't famous enough to invite the big companies to attend their opening ceremony. Even if they invited them, those big companies probably wouldn't come. Therefore, they needed to attract them to come. As long as many famous or powerful figures come to their opening ceremony, the Jade Beauty brand would gain popularity in a short time. That was exactly what they wanted. Gu Ning planned to invite Master Fu and Master Yin too. Although she wasn't influential enough to invite those two widely respected figures, Gu Ning was confident that they would come. In addition, once they knew that the king's green was here, they would definitely come. They would probably blame her for not telling them. Thus Gu Ning intended to invite them herself instead of letting them find out themselves. When everyone had finished their work, it was 6 p.m. already and it was time for dinner. Gu Ning told them to put the jade into the insurance room and then they could leave. They would continue tomorrow. Zhou Xinghong was about to order from a restaurant and have dinner together, but Gu Ning declined and used the excuse that she had a meeting with her friends. She told them to get the meal themselves and that they would be reimbursed. It was not that Gu Ning didn't want to dine with them, but they were employees and boss. She was a teenage girl too. Thus it wasn't convenient for her to hang out with several adult men. She got Zhou Xinghong drive her to the downtown to eat. Zhou Xinghong and others agreed. On her way to the downtown, Gu Ning called Master Fu. She asked whether he was free tomorrow. She wanted to meet him. Master Fu was happy to know that Gu Ning was in City G. He accepted her invitation quickly. He had promised to help Gu Ning, and he meant it, but thinking of what had happened in the Street of Stone gambling, Master Fu complained to Gu Ning. He thought the female was Gu Ning, but it turned out that she was a mature woman. He also complained that Master Bai had shown off in front of him. He was so mad and regretted refusing to go out with them today. Gu Ning couldn't help laughing. She said, "Grandpa Fu, you could simply say you know the woman, and she has even more valuable jade waiting for you. You could show off too." "I don't know the woman though." "If she had been you, I would have shown off," Master Fu said. "Actually, I'm the woman," Gu Ning answered without hesitation. Gu Ning had her own plan. She didn't want to hide from Master Fu. Of course, she wouldn't hurt Master Fu. She just wanted to expand her network through Master Fu. What? Hearing that, Master Fu was totally shocked. He couldn't believe his ears. He asked, "Do you mean that the woman was you?" "Yes. I didn't want to be recognized, so I changed my appearance on purpose. I didn't tell you because I was badly in need of money. I didn't have much time. Please don't be mad at me, Grandpa Fu," Gu Ning explained. In the beginning, Master Fu was indeed slightly mad. However, after her explanation, he didn't want to blame her. He wouldn't criticize her either. "Then I'll forgive you," Master Fu said. Even though, Gu Ning was slightly worried. She said, "But Grandpa Yen was there today. I didn't greet him because I wanted to hide my real identity. I'm afraid that he would probably be mad at me." "Ha ha, ha ha. He will. If he knows the woman is actually you, he'll be irritated, Master Fu said. He was gloating, aiming at both Gu Ning and Master Yan. Well, now I can show off in front of Master Bai and also annoy Master Yan, haha. Master Fu was a little excited. See, check out LTSTVL on novl/bin.cm. After a while, he asked, do you really have jade that is better than the violet jade? I will have, but not right now, Gu Ning answered. She didn't want to tell anyone else about the king's green at the moment. Great, then I'll wait. Master Fu believed in Gu Ning. He believed that she could cut out jade that was better than the violet jade. Gu Ning hung up. She turned to Zhou Xinghong and said, Uncle Zhou, please order a private room in the Huangding Hotel. I need you to go meet someone with me. He'll help us with the registration of our company. Sure, boss, Zhou Xinghong replied. He didn't ask who the person was. Meanwhile, Master Fu immediately called Master Bai after he hung up Gu Ning's call. Hey, Master Fu, what's up? Please don't bother me while I'm appreciating my violet jade. This violet jade is so beautiful. The minute Master Bai answered the call, he showed off plainly. However, this time, Master Fu wasn't mad at all. He asked meaningfully instead, Master Bai, what do you think of that woman's ability at stone gambling? Master Bai didn't know what the real meaning of Master Fu's words was, but he was interested in that woman. He commented, she's good. Even an expert can't cut out 4 valuable jade at one time. Ha ha. Girl Gu is indeed excellent. She cut out several jade of high quality last week. She even cut out more valuable jade continuously today, but she promised me she would tell me first when she gets a jade that is better than the violet the next time. So I don't care about your violet jade, Master Fu said proudly. He was showing off his intimate relationship with Gu Ning. Wait, what did you say? The woman is the girl named Gu Ning who you've told me before, but Master Yan didn't recognize her. Master Bai was surprised to know the truth. He couldn't believe it. Indeed. Master Yan knew Gu Ning, but he had failed to recognize her. The reason why Master Bai was so excited was because Master Fu and Master Yan had influenced him deeply. They both thought highly of Gu Ning and had mentioned her name many times. Otherwise, he wouldn't be interested in a stranger. This Gu Ning who was young, but had great ability. Not only had she cut out many emeralds, she had also picked out 2 real antiques. Her ability was extraordinary. However, Gu Ning would tell Master Fu first once she had a better jade the next time. Master Bai was now very jealous. A better jade than the violet jade. It had to be a top-level jade. The King's Green, Blood Beauty, Purple Eyes, Smurfs, Fulusho, and so on. Thinking of those jade, Master Bai was thrilled. Although he knew it was hard to find those jade, he believed that Gu Ning had the ability. No, Master Bai decided he had to meet the girl. He wouldn't allow Master Fu to get the top-level jade before him. Yes. That was because she didn't want to be recognized. She changed her appearance. All right, I'm going to have a walk now. Girl Gu doesn't come to City G often. She invited me to have a meal with her tomorrow morning. Can't reject that, right? Haha, Master Fu said proudly. He then hung up directly. Actually, Master Fu understood why Gu Ning told him the truth, but he didn't care. He had a great impression of her. In addition, she had great ability, so he sincerely wanted to become friends with her and support her. Before Master Bai could say another word, Master Fu had already hung up. He was annoyed and almost smashed his phone on the ground. He immediately called back, but Master Fu wouldn't answer. Master Bai was growingly restless, walking backwards and forwards in the living room. Dad, what's going on? A middle-aged man walked downstairs. He noticed Master Bai who was walking nervously in the living room. Read the latest stories on novl.bin.com. This middle-aged man was exactly the man that Gu Ning had met today. He was called Chairman Bai, the son of Master Bai, by Linwei. Master Fu told me that the woman we met today is the girl, Gu Ning. Master Fu and Master Yan have talked about her many times in front of me. He even said that the girl will tell him first if she gets a better jade in the future. A better jade than the violet jade must be top-level jade. The top-level jade? Master Bai said with anger. It seemed as if he had already missed the top-level jade. What? The woman we met today is the girl Uncle Fu has mentioned before? How come Uncle Yan didn't recognize her? Bai Linwei was surprised. Bai Linwei had also heard a lot about Gu Ning. He admired and was curious about her. Master Fu said that she didn't want to be recognized, so she disguised herself. Master Yan even failed to recognize her. The girl is going to be having a meal with Master Fu tomorrow. I'm going as well. I can't let Master Fu get the jade before me, Master Bai said. However, Master Fu wouldn't answer his call. What should he do? Oh, he could call Master Yan. Therefore, Master Bai called Master Yan at once. Gu Ning also called Master Yan after she hung up the phone with Master Fu. She thought that it was impolite to not tell Master Yan. Master Yan was also astonished to hear the fact that the woman that he had met today was actually Gu Ning. He was shocked at her outstanding ability to cut out 4 valuable jade continuously and her totally different appearance, but he didn't blame her after her explanation. When Master Bai called Master Yan, he found out that Gu Ning had invited Master Yan as well. When Master Bai proposed to attend the meal together with Master Yan agreed. Gu Ning felt like eating steak right now, so she went to a Western restaurant. At the same time, Li Jinjin was having a meal with a young lady. They were chatting and laughing. When Li Jinjin saw Gu Ning coming, she was upset and anxious. Why was Gu Ning in City G? Was she here to get revenge on her? Li Zhenyu had investigated Gu Ning already. He found out that Gu Ning was an ordinary child from a one-parent poor family. She wasn't good at studying and was disliked by most of her relatives, but the Gu Ning that they saw with their own eyes was different from the investigation. Gu Ning in their eyes had an extraordinary talent at stone gambling with a couple 100 million yuan of wealth. She was also good at fighting. She had beaten several men down and sent them to the hospital on her own. Accordingly, Gu Ning was mysterious. Li Jinjin didn't dare to relax only because of Li Zhenyu's investigation. She wasn't afraid that Gu Ning would sue her, because Gu Ning didn't have the proof, but Li Jinjin was worried that Gu Ning would get revenge on her. Jinjin, what's wrong? Seeing Li Jinjin's face change, a beautiful lady asked. She was Li Jinjin's good friend, Su Jing. Nothing, Li Jinjin got her mind back. Although she and Su Jing were good friends, she didn't tell her about Gu Ning. It was very shameful, so she didn't want to lose her face. Li Jinjin wanted to hide from Gu Ning, but Gu Ning had already noticed her. Besides, Gu Ning had no intention of letting Li Jinjin get away with what had happened last time. She wouldn't kill her of course, but she would torture her for sure. If Gu Ning had been a weak girl, she would have been ruined last time. Therefore, when Gu Ning saw Li Jinjin, she walked straight towards her with cold eyes. Li Jinjin was increasingly nervous. However, she was too proud to escape, so she could only face it. Oh, isn't this Miss Li? What a coincidence! I did plan to talk with you about our good old times. I don't expect to meet you here, Gu Ning said meaningfully with a kind smile. Others would believe they were really good friends, but Li Jinjin knew clearly Gu Ning did it on purpose. Gu Ning must want to hurt her. Li Jinjin tried her best to curb her nervousness. She said airily, Miss Gu, I don't know you actually. I don't think we need to talk. We do not know each other very well. However, what has happened between us can't be forgotten, right? Gu Ning said intentionally. Li Jinjin was stiff. She absolutely understood what Gu Ning was talking about, but she pretended to be calm and denied, I don't know what you're talking about. Please leave us alone, Miss Gu. It doesn't matter. I'll let you know. All right, I need to have my meal now. Oh, friendly alert, please be careful, Miss Li, Gu Ning said, then she was gone. Li Jinjin looked extremely unpleasant. Her body was trembling out of fear and anger. Gu Ning had made it very clear. She had warned her to be careful, which meant that she was going to hurt her. Jinjin, what is going on? Who is she? Su Jing apparently noticed that the two didn't get along well. Li Jinjin was also afraid of the other. It couldn't be simple. We aren't familiar. I just had an argument with her before. Li Jinjin did tell the truth, but she didn't tell any more details. Although Su Jing was curious, she stopped asking since Li Jinjin didn't want to tell her. They were good friends, but it didn't mean that there were no secrets between them. Li Jinjin lost her appetite, but they were almost finished anyway. Out of anxiety, Li Jinjin wanted to get home sooner, so she urged Su Jing to hurry. Gu Ning sneered, but didn't stop or stalk them. She didn't want to waste her time for eating on Li Jinjin. Once Li Jinjin left the restaurant, she said goodbye to Su Jing and headed home at once. After her meal, Gu Ning went to buy daily necessities in the market. Those were all the things she needed in her apartment. Li Jinjin couldn't relax until she got home. She was out of breath and sweaty. Li Jinyu noticed something was wrong. He asked with care, "Jinjin, what happened? You look so awful." "I just met Gu Ning. She warned me to be careful. I think she is going to hurt me, so I come back home quickly," Li Jinjin said. Her voice trembled a little. "What? Are you all right?" Li Jinyu was shocked and worried. "I'm fine," Li Jinjin replied. Then she asked nervously, "Will she really hurt me?" Li Jinjin wore an unpleasant face. He wasn't sure whether Gu Ning would hurt Li Jinjin or not. Gu Ning was out of his control. In his eyes, although it was Li Jinjin's fault, Gu Ning hadn't been hurt after all. Why couldn't she let it go? Nevertheless, one needed to take responsibility for his or her own behavior. One had to pay for the mistake he or she had made. Li Jinyu was also worried that Qin Yifan would find out. Even though Gu Ning didn't have proof, Li Jinyu wasn't sure whether Qin Yifan would choose to believe Gu Ning or Li Jinjin. They had a closer relationship with Qin Yifan, but it seemed as if Qin Yifan liked Gu Ning. It was possible that he would choose to believe Gu Ning. However, for now Qin Yifan didn't know the truth, probably because Gu Ning hadn't told him yet. If Gu Ning planned to tell Qin Yifan the truth, Li Jinyu couldn't stop her. He could only hope that Qin Yifan wouldn't believe Gu Ning, otherwise Li Jinjin's reputation would be ruined. Let alone Li Jinjin not marrying Qin Yifan in the future, they probably wouldn't be able to maintain their good relationship. Gu Ning's apartment wasn't far away from the downtown. She arrived there after 5 minutes by taxi. It was in a high-end living area, called Clean Water Blue Sky. The area was built 5 years ago, but the houses hadn't been fully sold out yet, especially those single apartments. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been easy for Zhou Xinghong to buy one. The living area was near the downtown and wasn't big with only 9 buildings, but there was a large number of green plants inside, which was quite pleasant. Exactly because of the enormous amount of green plants, there weren't many buildings. Gu Ning's apartment was on the 5th floor in the center of this living area. She walked a few minutes to get there. 5th floor, building number 8. Gu Ning opened the door and turned on the lights in her apartment. It was 50 square meters big with an indoor garden, a bedroom, a living room, a kitchen, a bathroom and a wide balcony. The decoration was simple but not boring. It was just the way that Gu Ning liked it. Zhou Xinghong had already hired an hourly worker to clean this apartment before Gu Ning moved in. After a whole day of work, Gu Ning hadn't called her mother yet. Gu Man also didn't call her. She probably didn't want to bother Gu Ning. Indeed, Gu Man didn't want to bother Gu Ning, so she didn't call her, but in her heart, she cared about her daughter very much. Gu Ning took a bath before lying on the bed, and called Gu Man. "Ning Ning, are you free now?" Gu Man asked the minute she answered the call. "Yes, I'm free now." "How are you today?" Gu Ning asked. "I'm fine. Your eldest uncle and aunt have called me many times, but I didn't answer at all," Gu Man said. "Great, just ignore them. They must be calling for nothing good," Gu Ning said. She hung up later, then clicked open the Family of Fighters WeChat group. There were over 1,000 messages. Gu Ning read them through for a while. Her friends were talking about the hot news in City G. Gu Ning then found out that she was on the news. Luckily, she had disguised herself today, otherwise it could be big trouble. Although they were close friends, Gu Ning had no intention of telling them that she was the young woman. Gu Ning didn't even tell them that she was in City G. She had only told them that she would be occupied this weekend. Her friends respected her, so they wouldn't ask if Gu Ning didn't want to tell them. Zhou Xinghong, Chang Qingshan and the others hadn't found out the hot news until that night. Even though they knew Gu Ning had outstanding ability, they were still shocked. 345 million yuan was a huge amount of money in their eyes. However, they had cut out several valuable jade today. They would be worth more than 345 million yuan. The king's green alone was worth at least 100 million yuan. They knew that Gu Ning didn't want to be recognized, so they would keep it a secret. They had already decided to be loyal to Gu Ning, and naturally wouldn't do anything to hurt her. Gu Ning then surfed the internet searching for information on the teapot and pink glass. Read the latest stories on novilbin.com. Those two antiques actually had a long history. The teapot had belonged to Shenwansan and was called Huang Teapot. Shenwansan had been an extremely wealthy businessman in the Qing dynasty. It had been said that Shenwansan had had a treasure bowl. If you put a gold bar into it, you could get a bunch of them back. If you put a silver ingot into it, you could get a bowl of them back. That had been the reason why Shenwansan had been the richest man in the world. However, it was only a legend. Even the emperor of the Qing dynasty had been jealous of Shenwansan. Shenwansan had then been treated unfairly and punished heavily by the emperor. After that, Shenwansan's family had completely lost their power and wealth. This Huang teapot would be worth at least 7 million yuan. Although the government in the Qing dynasty had taken away many of Shenwansan's properties, a lot were still missing. The pink glass with deer heads was from the Qianlong period. It was worth around 3 million yuan. Gu Ning also stored all the information of other antiques in her mind. In that case, she would know about its background the next time she bought an antique. The next day, Gu Ning got up at 6 a.m. She went to run downstairs and got familiar with the surroundings in this living area. However, to her great surprise, she met an acquaintance. They were barely acquaintances because they had only met each other once, but Gu Ning had a deep impression of him. The man was exactly the military officer who had informed them to leave the restaurant last week. "Hey, is it you?" The man greeted Gu Ning with excitement. No one could blame him for being so excited. Gu Ning had helped them a lot last time. Although she probably couldn't beat them down, she was only an 18-year-old girl, while they had been in the special forces for over 10 years. Gu Ning wasn't able to compete with them on the tough training. "Hi, what a coincidence!" Gu Ning greeted him friendly. "Do you live here?" the man asked. "Yes, but I only stay here on weekends if I have something to deal with," Gu Ning replied. "Oh, my name's Qin Meng." "What's your name, by the way?" Qin Meng asked. "I'm Gu Ning," Gu Ning replied. "So nice to meet you." Qin Meng reached out his hand. Gu Ning shook his hand lightly. "Nice to meet you too. I think you're pretty good at fighting. Well, would you mind if we had a competition?" Although Qin Meng felt that it was slightly impolite, he attempted to give it a try. Qin Meng was a grow-up man, while Gu Ning was a teenage girl. It seemed unfair, but he was really curious about Gu Ning's ability. However, Gu Ning was excited about his invitation. She actually wanted to practice. Qin Meng served in the military. He wasn't an ordinary soldier either. If Gu Ning wanted to practice, he would be an excellent choice. Therefore, the minute Qin Meng invited her, Gu Ning answered, "Sure. I had the same idea." Then, both of them went to a broad square to compete with each other. In the beginning, neither of them used their full force, not out of disrespect, but because they didn't want to show their real strength right away. They would adjust themselves according to the other's ability. In addition, they didn't plan to defeat the other. One wanted to practice, while the other wanted to have a try. Thus it was even at the beginning. However, Gu Ning's movements shocked Qin Meng because she moved so professionally and strongly. She must have received years of professional training. After a while, both of them became more aggressive, but it was still even. Qin Meng was gradually astonished. Gu Ning was almost as strong as a middle-level soldier in the special forces. The competition continued. They once again used more strength to compete with each other. Although it looked even, they knew that they were both losing energy. Gu Ning wasn't surprised at Qin Meng's ability, because he was a military officer, but Qin Meng was totally astonished by Gu Ning. It was so unbelievable. He had trained for over 10 years to be so powerful, but an 18-year-old girl was able to do the same thing as him. Qin Meng knew that if the competition went on, he was likely to lose, which was shameful. Thus he gave Gu Ning a hint to stop. Gu Ning also had no idea how long she could continue. She wasn't sure she would win either. She wanted to test her real ability, so she didn't use her power to assist her. "Wow, it is so unbelievable. Are you sure you're only 18? Qin Meng seemed disappointed, but he also admired Gu Ning. "I used my full strength already. I couldn't continue either, Gu Ning said. She was being modest. Chen Meng of course knew that Gu Ning didn't want to be proud. She helped him to save face too. He had a growing interest in Gu Ning now, but not as a man to a woman. There was an over 10-year age gap between them after all. Can I invite you to have breakfast together? Chen Meng asked with sincerity. Of course. Gu Ning accepted. The two walked towards the outside of this living area. Are you studying in a high school now? Chen Meng asked. Yes, I'm a senior in City F, Gu Ning replied. A senior. Then you're going to attend the National College entrance exam in half a year. Which university is your favorite? Chen Meng added. The Capital University, Gu Ning said. The Capital University. Chen Meng was a little surprised. He looked at Gu Ning with his eyes full of respect. Wow, it's the #1 university in our country. You must be very academic. I don't know whether I can get in or not. It's just my aim, Gu Ning said. She was being modest again. I believe you can make it, Chen Meng encouraged her. The two had breakfast, then went back home together. They coincidentally found out that they lived in the same building. However, Chen Meng's apartment was on the 12th floor, while Gu Ning's was on the 8th floor. Chen Meng had a great impression of Gu Ning when she had helped them control those two criminals last time. He would love to make a friend with her. Therefore, Chen Meng asked to exchange their numbers on his own initiative. If Gu Ning had any problems in City G, he could help. Although he didn't stay in City G often, he had his network here, especially in the police and the military. Gu Ning was more than willing to know Chen Meng. A network was built from good impressions, wasn't it? Gu Ning went back to her home to take a bath. Meanwhile, Chen Meng immediately called Leng Xiaoting and told him everything. FITDEU UPTS on NOV/E/LN.com. He had no idea about what was going on between Leng Xiaoting and Gu Ning. He was simply excited. Leng Xiaoting had also met Gu Ning before after all, so it made sense to talk to him. What's up? Leng Xiaoting said airily. Boss, you can't imagine who I've just met. I met the girl who had beaten down those two drug dealers last time in the restaurant while I was running this morning. We had a competition. She is so good. I wasn't even able to beat her. Ah, it's so disappointing. Chen Meng said. Leng Xiaoting was struck dumb when he heard about Gu Ning. She was in City G? Chen Meng couldn't beat Gu Ning? Leng Xiaoting was shocked. He clearly knew about Chen Meng's ability. Chen Meng was a teammate in his Red Flame team. If Gu Ning had equal ability as Chen Meng, she must be very skillful and powerful. You can't even beat a young girl. Don't you think you need to practice and train more? Leng Xiaoting said coldly. Hearing that, Chen Meng was nervous. He immediately regretted telling Leng Xiaoting. He felt like he was trapped. He couldn't beat a young girl, which meant he lost. Well, I need to deal with something right now, bye. Chen Meng hung up at once, and took a long breath in. However, he knew he couldn't escape from the training ahead. Whatever, he also planned to train more when he got back to his team. It was still embarrassing that he couldn't beat a girl. After the bath, Gu Ning was watching TV in her apartment. When it was almost 10 p.m., Zhou Jinghong called her. He had already booked a private room. Its number was 888. Gu Ning then immediately called Master Yan and Master Fu. The time was settled at 11 a.m. in number 888 private room in Huangdang Hotel. Gu Ning as the host should be there earlier, so she left her home at a little past 10 a.m. When she arrived at the private room, it was 10:40 a.m. Zhou Jinghong was already waiting for her in the room. 10 minutes later, Master Fu and Master Yan came in along with Master Bai. Zhou Jinghong had no idea who the guests would be. Thus he was so shocked and jumped up from his chair when Master Fu, Master Yan and Master Bai walked in. Grandpa Fu, Grandpa Yan, Grandpa Bai, it's so nice to meet you all. Gu Ning immediately stepped ahead and greeted them. Haha, I hope we arrived on time. Master Fu said. That's all for this part, truckers. See you all in the next video.